Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show on Friday, the 27th of July. A warm welcome if you are just joining us as a viewer, and welcome if you are a panel member, as a commenter in the chat. So good evening to everybody and good evening to my esteemed co-host. How are you, my good sir?
Very well, thank you. Very, very warm. It's unbelievable how I used to think only a few months ago, wow, it's a mild, mellow 33 degrees. Wonderful. Let's go outside and just enjoy the cool breeze. And now I'm sitting in a country where it's not normally so hot and everything's different. Now suddenly 33 is like living hot.
Yeah, if you don't live with it all the time and it suddenly happens, it feels hotter than when you were living
And we have
in
the
other
super
hot
moon
countries.
tonight. I forgot about the super moon tonight.
Yes, that's right. So in about an hour's time, give or take, there will be a supermoon. If you can see it out the window, hopefully I'll be able to see it. I might try and take a photo and screenshot it on here. Stops will be doing for those who are watching, and usually I would host the crazy comments and the video critique that we're going to do, unless there's any Muslims who are watching and want to join the show. We will quite happily postpone the video critique if you're a Muslim and you want to join us and share why you think Islam is true or counter something that you think we've said that's not true. Other than that, we'll be doing the video critique, but Stops will be running that because my internet is still poor. I've had the internet person out here today and there's some fault on the line that they're going to repair next week. So who knows? Anyway, at least I'm broadcasting like this, but as soon as I try and put up pictures or run a video, then the feedback has not been so good. So with that in mind, there's been some interesting. Stops and I have both been on Facebook, and so we've interacted a little bit with various groups on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, then and you want to get some fascinating responses from people, then I'm happy to invite you or tell you which groups to look at, etc. And you can go in there and have some interactions. So Stops, if you want to. Do you want to start with a few of those conversations that you had recorded there?
Do.
This one's a classic.
Okay, do I need to... Oh, I'm presenting the... Okay, you've switched me on, okay. This is not actually a thing, what you call it.
I think we did that one last week.
I was just fascinated. I was just totally fascinated by it because it shows, the mindset. And the same thing with the video, because I thought about this, because you sent me a second one. And I thought the second one, there's no way we can do it because people are going to say, yeah, but now you're picking on the low-hanging fruit. You're taking stupid, uneducated Muslims and making them look foolish. Well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, this is the level that we're getting. This is the kind of apologetics that we are being confronted with. Okay, so what are we supposed to do with that? Because you will see in my comments today on Facebook, people are, I mean, they're not really with it. They're really, really uneducated, really, really stupid. And our favorite village idiot, the Kenny guy, he's also there. Okay, and this is the level that we are confronted with. He does not understand that I am saying I am not an atheist because the word atheist carries so much baggage. His own people gave me a definition which is like 15 pages long and does all sorts of things which I do not do, which is impossible. And it says it's somebody who hates God, who denies God, who this. I'm sorry, I do not. So it doesn't work that way, and this is why I'm saying no. I am not that kind of an idiot. I'm not that kind of an atheist. So I'd rather label myself not atheist because I am not an atheist. And yet, at the same time, and this is now something I don't know. I need to make this pretty one of these days. What I need to do. This is so brilliant. I am not an atheist because I pretend to know there is no God. I'm an atheist because I don't pretend to know there is one.
Is this a comment? Because I'm still seeing at the moment the two apes on the screen.
Something that I am quoting, okay?
Okay.
I saw this on Facebook or on Twitter, and I found this so profound. I'm not an atheist because I pretend there is no God. I'm an atheist because I don't pretend to know there is one. And that is so wonderfully put, because it describes the entire situation. It describes the entire mindset of a theist who says, well, yeah, I'm going to pretend I know that there's a God. And that's why I am not an atheist. And this is exactly what I'm not. So I think this is wonderful. Anyway, so this is the level that we're talking about, and this is why I find this a little bit sad. Now, this is what happens. This Marshall Gregory guy, he went around and propagated. I mean, he was quoting, I don't know, 17th or 16th century UK laws where the age of consent for kids, or even today, there are countries where the age of consent is very low, because he thinks because the age of consent is so low, people can go and rape kids. And I said to him, "You're sick in the brain. How can you go and you bring up the laws of 16th century UK regarding the age of consent? I mean, what is the point that you are making? Come on, don't you have any morality? Don't you have any kind of I don't know, decency in you?" And I said, "You're sick in the brain." And what happens is Facebook comes to me again. This is how sick this is. They come to me and say, "This goes against our community standards." But the guy who is propagating child rape, that's okay. Not me if I say this. This is so stupid.
Before you do that, Stops, I've just posted a link in the inner chat there. Maybe just click on that link and bring it up, because it's the tu quo quo fallacy that often we'll hear Muslims engage in, and maybe you can, because if I share it, it'll go slowly. I mean, I can read it out. For those that are unaware, something called the tu quo quo fallacy. I'll post the link for other people to look at here in the chat. Yeah, tu quo quo.
So it's the type of ad hominem argument, it's not an ad hominem, in which a person turns a charge back on his or her accuser, also called the you too, or you also the two wrongs, or the look who's talking fallacy. Pronunciation tu quoque, exactly. Also known as the two wrongs fallacy. In other words, you too. In other words, if I say, well, there's a lot of mistakes in the Quran, a lot of people will tell me, well, in your Bible too. Now,
exactly.
This has any meaning, because it doesn't really matter how many mistakes. Well, regardless that it's not my Bible, but even if there were 50 million mistakes in the Bible, that would not make the Quran any better, and vice versa. If there were no mistakes in the Bible, this would not make the Quran any worse, because the Quran stands on its own. It has nothing to do with either one or the other. So this is why it's a fallacy, because saying that the BMW is bad because the Audi's dashboard is cleaner or something is stupid. I mean, you need to go and you say the BMW's dashboard is bad because, and then you can go and make your point. But just saying because the other one is better or worse or the same or something, doesn't matter. It has no standing.
No, and this is used a lot whenever there's, and you'll notice, and again, because I'm all about the tactics and the fallacies that are used by certain apologists. As soon as the back's against the wall, some fallacy will be thrown out, and this will be one of them. Often it's used against Christians, but sometimes against atheists, depending on the situation. And obviously, what the other thing that it does is they're tacitly accepting that there's an error or there's a problem, but they're going, hey, as you've quite rightly said, and the page says as well, but you also have that problem. Well, that's fine. Just accept that you've got the problem, because that's what we're talking about. I'm quite happy to accept if there is a problem that I have it, or we have it, or whoever has it. But it's just a deflection tactic. So I thought it'd be useful to put that up, because with regards to this guy, I followed some of this thread, and there was, and I don't know if you're going to cover that, Stops, but they were quoting Bible verse after Bible verses to try and show.
This is the funny.
Yes, to you, as if the first question is asked is, what do you believe? Do you believe the Bible's true or not, or whatever the case is? And they were quoting these verses to try and show that the age of consent in historically has been very low around the world. Nobody's denying that. The point is, what do we believe about the age of consent now that we have a better understanding of biology, neurology, cognitive abilities, etc., and the ability to actually make an informed decision or informed consent? So It was just complete. I'm like, why is this guy wasting his time? We're not Christians. If you want us to accept that, in the past people married very young, I'm quite happy to accept that. But nobody else is going around claiming that marrying young today is a good thing to do or should be followed. That's the difference. But of course, this is lost.
And to make it quite clear, I strongly condemn anyone who thinks of raping or having sex or getting in any way sexual with a kid, with anyone below their own age. If it's 18, well, okay, then it's a different story. But I'm very sorry if you're going to tell me that Muhammad was such a perfect person because at the age of 60 he had a 17-year-old wife or girlfriend or lover or something. That does not hold water. Okay, it's a lot better than having sex with a 9-year-old, sure. But please, having sex with a 17-year-old girl, this reminds me of this Hugh Hefner guy. They're sick. So I strongly condemn any kind of such action. Okay, this is my morality because I don't have a God who tells me no, it's okay, to have sex with your cousin. It's okay to have sex with your own daughter under certain Sharia compliance circumstances. I strongly condemn it. And that's it.
Of course, as you know, Stops, of course, then the next question from the theist is, where do you get your morality from? You've got no right to say X, Y, and Z. And of course, that's a completely separate argument, but they often get conflated together when, somebody's back is against the wall, they'll use any tactic available. And there was a very interesting, and I'll see if I can find it and put it out for people. Those people are interested in the moral and ethical arguments. There was a very interesting one that just happened recently with a young guy called Cosmic Skeptic and Alex Malpass, who is a professional philosopher. And they had an interesting, so these were two non-believers talking about morals and ethics. So it's worth, having a conversation or listening to or familiarizing yourself with that. But maybe we can talk about that again another time. So, yeah.
Did you do introvert? So Span's mic's not working. Can barely hear him. Oh.
Who can't be heard?
Me.
Oh, you're coming through clear to me.
Okay, my room sounds roomy.
If you're watching and you're a Muslim or an ex-Muslim or a non-Muslim and you want to join the show, either to help us critique the video that's coming up or you want to share perspective on something, then let me know in the comments. I will need you to be a friend of mine on Facebook and I can send you the link to the show and you can join us as a panelist. So I'll just put that out there. Over to you, Stops, to continue.
Don't do that because then we're going to talk again and we're not going to critique the video. Okay. This is now really a comment. But I said, okay, I made some videos on bouquet, on Moor, on things like that. Okay, and there are some people who don't agree with me, who think that Bouquet is the most wonderful scientist to receive at least 15 Nobel Prizes. So he must be right. So he says, besides Quran claiming the universe is or was expanding, why would you say it's wrong? The universe is expanding, however fast or slow. It exists. You can argue no expansion, so on and so on. So he doesn't really understand my point, does he? Now, I don't know if I need to explain this again. Somebody claiming that the garden is expansive because it's quite large, it's vast, it's huge. Okay, might be making a point. But that doesn't mean that the garden is expanding. And this is exactly what Bouquet did. He just took the sentence and then took the one word in the sentence, which is expansive or vast, and modified it to read expanding. Now, the problem is that this was done a long time ago, and they only had when was it, 1929, when this was published. So we know from 1929 that the universe is expanding. And then they put this in the Quran, they changed the Quran, and they changed it into it's steadily expanding. But then 20 years ago, we found out it's not only steadily expanding, it's actually accelerating. And now the whole thing starts again. You have to change the Quran again because you have to remove the word steadily, which they haven't done. So
Stops, just to jump in there. Sorry, Stops. Yeah. People are saying that they can't hear you that clearly. Your audio is not coming through. Now, I'm hearing you because I'm listening to the live Hangout link rather than the live broadcast link, which all the other viewers are on. But people are saying your audio is not clear. I don't know if you can make it a bit louder, turn up the volume on your mic or anything.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
Yep. Yep. So Stops is just going to see if he can adjust his audio there, and then just let us know. We can hear him clearly. Okay, so some people can hear you clearly. So for those that are not hearing you, then it's obviously just perhaps your connections. Somebody's saying it's just a big room. It sounds like you're in a big room. So I don't know if that's echoing off the walls, reverbing off the walls there to make it sound big.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me just go to AGC, microphone 100, advanced radam. Everything is normal. Everything is.
You're louder to me now. So if you're listening to this and Stops is speaking now, please let us know whether 1 if he's audible and clear, or 2 if he's not loud or he's unclear. So 1 if he's audible and clear, 2 if he's not audible or unclear.
No, it's perfect. Okay, so it's actually that. It's a different microphone. Because of the heat, I wanted a lighter one, so I put on the speaker one, the little Bluetooth thing, which has a microphone built in, so that I can run around, go to the kitchen, get a cool drink. But it seems that the microphone doesn't always.
Yeah, I mean, very few. There's very few good Bluetooth ones. The only good Bluetooth one I've come across is the Apple EarPods, because they have a special chip that Apple has put in to improve the audio quality. So most Bluetooth headsets are much poorer quality than Wi-Fi or wired headsets. So if you have an Apple EarPod, they're good.
This one is a so-called professional one with noise cancelling and blah blah blah. This works like an absolute dream. But it seems that here on the Hangout, it's not so well received, because normally I'm using it on the phone and between the computer, between different phones and blah, 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 because it's automatically switching over immediately. And this is brilliant. I mean, this is the best headset I've ever had in my life. But this is for telephone conferences. This is not actually intended for this. But I'm surprised, because normally it's really brilliant. Anyway, so this guy, BK, do I need to repeat everything? No, come on. Okay, so this is just somebody who's an idiot, who says the universe is expanding, and I'm saying there's a mistake there. Well, I'm saying the mistake is in the Quran, which doesn't say that the universe is expanding. They're just using a word and modifying it. That's it. Then he must have thought about this, and then came back again. Lol, you hate Muslims. And Quran, lol. I don't know what this lol means for them. It's kind of silly. Why would you claim there are several authors of the Quran? Indeed, why would I claim that? So, why not ask? Why not ask? You have to understand Quran is not a science book. It's a moral code. No, it's neither a science book, because it's full of mistakes, and it's not a moral code because it's totally immoral. So it's neither. But some people don't seem to understand this. It doesn't work. So, and Rafa says the Quran is not a book of science. Now let me explain to all scientific miracles in the Quran. But remember, it's not a book of science. Exactly. And I told the software, I had a very serious talking to the software and told it exactly which one to use. And here, when you test it, it works. Okay, this is the problem. It's only when it goes into live, which you can't simulate, then it's a problem. Okay,
Yeah,
so there we go. This is what some people do, and this is what some people think.
They do think that's quite cute. It's not a book of science. It's a book of signs.
Yeah.
Big smile on the face. That's very
Brilliant.
cute. Yes.
Okay, here we go. This is from one of the videos. I can't remember which one. No. I can refute each bullshit claim. Since you're the one making the claim, provide proof, so I can put you in your place. And I said, okay, and if I do, then what? If I provide compelling evidence, you can't refute it because it's compelling evidence. So then what will you do? Will you admit the Quran contains at least one mistake? You talk a lot, my friend. Just relax. There's really no need for you to speak like that. And if you provide me with evidence of a mistake, that's fine. I'll either put it into context or explain what ways the Arabic words can be used. And one thing for sure, I'll never admit the Quran has any mistakes.
End of discussion with that fellow there. You're speaking to a dogmatic, closed-minded person who will find some way in his own brain to rationalize anything you bring to him.
Oh boy,
Thank
I've
you.
never heard it put so plainly and so drastically. I'll never admit the Quran has any mistakes, no matter what you do, no matter what evidence you provide, but he's never going to admit.
Well, at least, I mean, you could throw a compliment. It might be slightly backhanded compliment, but you could put the compliment in that at least he's an honest, dogmatic, closed-minded individual.
Bigot.
But either way, there's no conversation to be had there, really.
I thought this was so cute. Okay, and now we'll go into our Facebook adventures, because there's groups on Facebook which I find incredibly entertaining. And
This one
thank
is
you.
classic.
Sorry?
This one that you're going to do now is classic. Just make it a bit bigger, Stops. The text is a bit small there. You can see the first one is quite big, but then it's very small for people to read, I think. Yeah, that looks better. Sweet.
Okay, so the point that I'm making, this is a Facebook group, okay? Now, I joined, and then I went and made some comments, and then I had so much fun that I told Rob, listen, if you're looking for entertainment, come pull in here, cousin, and look at this. And this is a group. Remember last time I was chucked out of a group which called itself Science, what is it? Something physics and biology or something. And they chucked me out because they said, well, this is for Muslims only. This is for, to educate Muslims. And I showed them that they're totally wrong and they didn't like that. Here, they have not checked me out yet. At least, well, I don't know. I haven't checked today. But the funny thing is, I said to them, you issued a challenge to provide a mistake in the Quran. Okay, you can't handle basic arithmetic, so how about basic chemistry? Because I gave them the inheritance thing and they were waffling and da-da-da, but they couldn't really do anything with it. So they left it. Now, the way that they work is you issue a challenge, somebody comments, and then closes the whole topic for further comments. So he has the last say, so he can write any kind of bullshit that he wants, and then he closes this for comments, saying, well, we don't want to endlessly discuss this. So it's his say at the end of the day who determines what the hell is going on here. So what I did, and I did this after 22 hours, I said, you issued a challenge. Okay, how about basic chemistry? In 2130, we made every living thing out of water. Allah created every moving thing, creature from water. He who created man from water. Is this true? No. Humans, beings are not created from water. Please address the mistake. Nothing, crickets, nothing, deadly silence. So then, a day later, I said, so what happened to this statement that this Ashraf Kotbe made? Put any claim we will discuss. They don't. They're running away from it. They're desperately trying to get rid of us. They're desperately trying to avoid the situation. And this is the kind of nonsense that they are writing, okay? So say, you can consider what you want to consider. That doesn't make your point valid or true. All shares, and this is the inheritance shares, okay, in every possible inherent case must always sum up to 100%. So according to your calculation, the Quran is incorrect. This is my assumption. We are saying Quran never said that all inheritance cases will always sum up to 100%. Prophet Muhammad's hadith clearly states that in some cases, inheritance cases might not be always 100%. Prophet Muhammad said, give the fara'id, the shares of the inheritance, to those who are entitled to receive it. Then whatever remains should be given to the closest male relative of the deceased. So this is the opposite case that I'm making. Result, your argument is wrong, as it is based on wrong assumptions and not supported with any evidence. So your argument is invalid and unsupported. I mean, he's just said that. You're attacking a straw man. End of discussion. Have a good evening. And then an admin turned off commenting for this post. So this is how they do. He says, this is your assumption, which is not my assumption. Then he's making a different case. And then he says, well, you're wrong. End of discussion. Goodbye. And that's the end of it.
I do think they battle to understand these things because nobody's brought this to them before, potentially, or if they have. We're not saying they're the first people to bring it. I mean, this has been around, but they have not been confronted with this. And the first time you read it, it's not straightforward. Like, you were created from water. That's straightforward. Nobody needs to interpret that or to think about that too much. It's either right or wrong. With this, obviously, you've got to go and work out the sums, and it takes a few minutes. So it's not something that somebody's going to immediately understand. But I think the fact that it's not been brought to them in such a way that they probably won't even go and read through it. They will go and look for something on the internet, Google refute inheritance claim, and then bring you something that they've never read. I mean, that's what Paul Williams did. And I've now coined it the PW approach. The PW approach, for those who don't know, is, in honor of Paul Williams, who is, we've talked about this many times. I'm not going to refute you anymore. We're done talking about this. And if you go and watch one of my live streams, that's kind of almost word for word, or fairly close to what was said. Now, I've discussed this multiple times. We're not going to talk about it. I said, refute me on camera now, and then I'll never have to bring it again. No, I've done it before. And if you go and look at the Twitter feed, all that happened was, hey, I am satisfied that there is some kind of refutation or resolution to this. That was the Twitter, if it hasn't been deleted, that was on there. And I think that seems to be the case. So there you go.
Now, everything that they do, everything is censored. There's no free speech here. No. Your post has been submitted and is pending approval. And that is it. You have no say. They first censor everything. They first check everything, double check, triple check, blah, 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 so that under no circumstances are you allowed to say anything. And that if they don't like anything, this is what happens. Oh, no, this is not. So he then goes, which argument? You are building your argument on false assumptions, blah, blah. Once again, we distribute actual wealth. And now listen to this. I mean, this is, I did not pick this guy, okay? I'm not picking on stupid, non-intelligent, uneducated people, okay? This guy is sitting on a Facebook group panel, and he is addressing people who have questions about Islam. Now, I came there and I asked, how can you have a 2/3 share and a 1/3 share plus an 1/8 share if it doesn't add up? So he says, how do you think we will give someone exactly 1/6 of an apartment or 1/8 of a car? You are building your arguments on wrong initial assumptions in terms of distribution amounts and order of distribution.
Complete confusion there. I don't know what's going on in the brain there. We're not talking about a car or anything. Talk about inheritance. So he's obviously trying to, in his mind, seemingly boil this down to physical objects, and then going in his mind, well, you can't split this up. Therefore, we you're wrong.
But again, he says, read and educate yourself on simple. Okay, let me try this again. Read and educate yourself on simple logic and get Khwarizmi book.
Get what?
Now, the Khwarizmi is a polymath, okay? He lived 1,000 years ago, and he is a guy from, I think it's from Persia. Nobody really knows. His father was Zoroastrian, and he is attributed a status of a Muslim, even though nobody can really show that he's a Muslim. But he wrote the book with the word al-jabr in it to tidy up. And this is where the word algebra apparently comes from. So he is the guy who didn't really, it's not A plus B plus C equals, blah, the binomial formulas and all that. He didn't do that. He took the old Babylonian idea of algebra and then made it easier to understand, but not using ABC, but using words for these things, expressions. He did not yet use formulas. So there's not a single formula in his book. But about, I'd say like 30% of the book is on inheritance, where he tried to take algebra and use algebra to show the different values that you can get with a person. The problem is that this goes against the Quran. You see, this is what the people don't understand, or this is where the problem lies, and this is why it's a mistake in the book, because whatever you do with this, it will always contradict the Quran, and this is the problem. And this is what the people don't understand.
That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter what response, and that's why I consider this a knockdown error. There's no response you can bring that doesn't contradict the Quran, unless you could find something in the Quran that says, hey, you can do something. If you're bringing hadiths and you're bringing other things, well, that contradicts the Quran, because nowhere, as far as I'm aware, and you said it stops as well, nowhere in the Quran does it allow you to go and change the inheritance laws in the Quran. You can quote other places, but which is more important?
And
But
this
of course,
is what he sent me. He sent
Yes.
me, this is how it's supposed to work. So the daughters, so the wife gets 1/9. Okay, nowhere in the Quran does it mention anything about a wife getting 1/9. Suddenly the daughters don't get 16/24, but they get 16/27, which it doesn't say in the Quran at all. The 4/27 for father and mother are not mentioned in the Quran either. And then, in the bottom thing, they tell you what the rules are. The wife should get 1/8 and not 1/9. Okay, the daughter should get 2/3 and not 16/27. And the mother and the father should get 1/6 and not 4/27. But total shares have exceeded 100%. Shares need to be reduced proportionally. Rule number 18. But then they contradict the Quran. There's it. So there's nothing that you can do. You can't argue with this. Okay, there's no way to get out of this, because either you are saying the Quran is wrong, or you're saying human beings can do it better. Or, there's no way. There's nothing that you can do. So
yeah.
Okay, so now this Ashraf Cop guy says, because I said to him, look, stop telling me that I am wrong, because it doesn't matter. Maybe you can be arrogant enough to think that I am wrong immediately and that you are right, but that's not always the case. And he says, first, we don't tolerate being offensive here. Offensive. So the next time you use something like "you are arrogant," you will be kicked out, because the question, or the thing, you have every reason, maybe you think you can be arrogant. The word arrogant is being offensive. And this shows how desperate people are to bring in this hate speech, because then even arrogance, the word arrogance, suddenly becomes offensive, hate speech. And this is why this whole thing with the hate speech is totally, totally ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you've just highlighted it there. It just shows the slippery slope. It's a subjective claim. Even the law in the United Kingdom, which is supposed to be progressive, doesn't have a clear definition, and therefore it's up to certain people. And if they're going to be consistent, then we can play the same game. And they would have to agree that whatever we find as offensive or insulting would also have to be banned. And by this stage, everybody can just zip their mouth and nobody can say anything.
Yeah. Anyway, then he throws the Islamic inheritance calculator at me, which I've just shown you, which actually makes my point, which he doesn't understand. So I say, sure, you can throw anything you want at me, but as soon as I give you a true analysis, I'm being offensive. But I say, whatever, it's your rules, because I'm not going to, I can't argue with him. Okay, it's his show, his house, his rules. Okay. And now he makes this funny sentence: put any claim we will discuss. But he doesn't. And he says, be offensive and you're out. That's so simple to understand, right? So even if you're not offensive, they still don't discuss it, because they don't know what to do with these mistakes. They're really, really, really lost. Okay, here I can see already. I need to go like this. And
Yep. There you go.
Okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just said, look, I already explained everything. To say something is wrong, you have to tell us why it's wrong. That's common sense, and blah, blah, blah. And I did, okay? And I said, what more do you need? If you demand something and I tell you I did, what more do you need? Do I need to repeat the same thing for everyone individually? So I said, well, just to appease you, there are many mistakes in these passages, actually amazing, because there's a hell of a lot wrong. If you read the first sentence already, it says that the boy will get more than the girls, but the girls get 2/3. So if the boy gets double of 2/3, he gets 4/3 out of 3/3. Plus the 2/3, so that you have 6/3 now all of a sudden. Come on, nothing makes sense if you look at whatever it says in the Quran. And I've just scratched the surface, because if you look in this, there's so many mistakes. So I said, just take any combination. So if you take 3 daughters, parents, single wife, doesn't work. Try using a Sharia compliant inheritance calculator and you'll see it. So I have given you the sentence number and the description and a way to reproduce it. Do you need more? And then some guy laughs at this because he can't handle this, because they don't know what to do with this, because they're still lost. So this is the variation, the continuation of the Khwarizmi book. And of course, I say this is my fault. I didn't write the 0, either address the facts or leave it, you make the claims, address the argument, not the person, da, 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 da. And then I was unable to post the comment. Someone else was typing. This was the guy locking everything and writing his last comment, but I was already unable to type anything because it was locked. And here's another calculator just showing again, in case any Muslim is watching, in case you're wondering, maybe this was a mistake, or no, it wasn't. Here's another one, it shows the same thing.
Is this another calculator?
This is another calculator. And here it shows very clear, I mean, 2/3, 3 daughters. But if they were women above 2, then for them 2/3 of what you left, okay? So if I go...
Have you got the link for this one, Stops? Because that's nice to have those, the actual part of the verses there as well, because I think it's not easy, I'll be honest. Well, obviously it is for you, but for first-time readers who read the sentence, this thing just puts it into a nice visual. So it quotes the part of the verse, it shows you the daughters, and you can visualize it in your head a little bit easier potentially than just reading sentences alone. So this looks quite good here.
I don't remember it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then what they say here is, and to his parents, to each one, the 6th. Okay, so they put here a 6th and a 6th. And they make this very small, but a 6th and a 6th is a 3rd.
Yeah.
So the graphical representation here is totally out. Okay, so they're contradicting themselves.
And then they've still got a part there that shows remaining, as if there's something remaining. I don't know who don't maths. They seriously need to relook at their basic fractional maths.
So in any case, this is what they do. Okay, they show the share of the son. There's nothing here. The share of the daughter, so they get 66%. Okay, that's cool. The share of the mother. Excuse me? How does that go? Share of the mother is 5. Now, if you have 100, if you divide 100 by 6, you don't get 5. So there's something very wrong here. So what they're doing is they're just making, and there's still 18 remaining. Oh boy, they are so stupid. Anyway, this is the way that it works. So that's it. Okay, that's my crazy comments for today.
Cool. Yeah, so again, if you're interested in joining some of them, and that one that Stops was just referring to now, it's a Facebook group called Bring It On, i.e. it seems to be a challenge for non-believers to bring on a challenge to this Muslim group. But of course, once a challenge is being brought on, then you get all kinds of gymnastics and tap dancing. And eventually, and it happened to me as well, because I followed up on Stops' thing, and I posted a long comment saying, hey, he brought something to you, what's going on? And there was about 30 comments, and then that was locked as well. So you couldn't carry on posting. So I don't hold this particular group in particularly high regard. No. Because according to them, and of course it's their subjective judgment, that things are going around in circles. Well, I would submit humbly that it's not us that are going around in circles. We keep saying the same thing. It's other people that are attempting to go around in circles. But there we go. So again, before we go into the video now, just a question: if you're interested in joining us, either as a non-Muslim or as an ex-Muslim, or ideally as a Muslim that wants to have a conversation around Islam, this show critiques Islam. So if you're coming on here to challenge Christianity or atheism or whatever, then this probably isn't the show for you. If you want to come on here and defend Islam because you believe it's true and you've got good reasons and evidence for it, we would be very interested to hear from you. But even until that stage, and I will also post my Facebook link here. So let me just do that. So if indeed you do want to join us, then here's the link. You need to friend me on Facebook, and then I can send you the link for that. I'll have, what's his name might join us. I'm just trying to bring it up here. We'll have Wise Religious has done a couple of videos recently, so we'll probably get him to join us a little bit later on. I think he's at work or whatever the case is. Alrighty, Stops. I think without further
Muslim defense, I wasn't watching now while I was doing the presentation. I didn't see that we had Muslim defense here.
Yes, I've asked him to join, and he felt like he was not at the level to want to join. He suggested another brother. So if you're listening, Muslim Defense, if you have another brother that wants to join, then you can give them this link. They can come to the show. They can friend me on Facebook, and I'll send them the link. If you feel you prefer not to, that's absolutely fine. Not everybody, it's not the platform for everybody. Some people work better on comments, other people work better live, so everybody's different. What we care about is what's true or likely true. That's the most important thing, whether it is uncomfortable, whether it means we have to change something in our worldview, then we'll do so. And we hope and want our interlocutors to be of a similar mind. But if, as the one commented that Stops had there, nothing will change his mind, then obviously please do not ever come on here. We're not interested in dogmatic, unreasonable people. Alrighty, so with that, this video then is it's a video that I happened to find with our friend Mohammed Hijab speaking to a gentleman in Speaker's Corner. And he's going to make some, as he often does, some fairly big claims here. And again, we can critique that and see whether they are backed up. One thing I'll notice, I'm going to put it out there, and you'll hear it actually in this video, is you've got to listen to this carefully, and you've got to listen to what is being said by people in the sense of, are they backing up what they say? Because one of the tactics you'll see very early on here, and we'll talk about it and we'll stop it anyway, is, hey, I'll make a claim, you refute it. No, this is not the way you have a rational and reasonable and intellectual level of a dialogue. If you make a claim, you give us the reasons why. So you give us your ontology, i.e. what is it you believe, and why, your epistemology. What is it that gives you the reasons to believe whatever you believe? You don't say to me, hey, I could say to any Muslim, hey, the moon is made of green cheese, refute me. That's not the way it works. I need to tell you why I believe it's made of green cheese, and then you can challenge my reasons. But of course, as we'll see, that doesn't necessarily happen. So when you're ready, Stops.
Yeah, no, I just realized that this is this official Speaker's Corner channel. The OSCE, the official Speaker's Corner channel, hashtag Dawa. And this is the biggest bunch of liars. I don't know why I don't know why so many times it's exactly on this channel that you find these kind of things, which are like total, absolute, utter, sheer nonsense.
I will put the video into the link as well, so nobody can accuse us of things. Again, we are critiquing this video, which is allowed under the YouTube Commons law. So we'll put the video into the link as well. I've put it into the chat. So if you want to watch the full video in its entirety without our critique, then obviously you can do that. But we will now critique this. So we'll go through the video, give our thoughts as we go through it. And that's entirely legal. So there we go.
Oh, are people discussing the existence of Muhammad? Because I see the Jacobi doctrine and things like that.
What's that, sorry?
There seems to be a discussion here, because I see, because the only place where the Jacobi doctrine is relevant is when you're talking about Muhammad, because this was written like maybe 8 years after Muhammad's death, and it doesn't mention Muhammad. I mean, none of them actually mentions Muhammad, but it mentions some lying prophet, and all of a sudden, for them, a lying prophet, yeah, that's a perfect description of Muhammad, and that he's standing on a chariot and with a sword and blah blah blah. And this is quite weird. That they say that Muhammad was alive 6 years after he was dead, according to Hadith and the Sunnah in general. And here suddenly all these things don't matter anymore, because now suddenly they seem to have somebody who's saying, yeah, Muhammad actually existed. So everything that they normally claim about Muhammad, about the Sunnah, that goes down the side, and they're just focusing on one thing now. This is quite weird. Okay, let's go to the video. Tell me if the audio works. I'm hoping that it does. I've set it up so it should.
No, I'm not hearing anything yet.
Okay.
No, nothing coming through for me.
Audio playback. Okay, cool. So it's there. Volume is up. I don't want V equal. Yes, it's switched on. Unbelievable. Okay. I have speakers selected. Yes. Yes, everything's cool. Noise suppression, we don't. It's 0 to be da 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 da. Okay, let me try again.
No, have you set it up inside Hangouts itself? So that little gear icon in the Hangouts.
Good point. Have I indeed?
So whatever output, you need to match the input with the output.
Indeed, I have not. I need to put it to minicam microphone.
Yeah, I can't, Rafa, because I'm on a poor internet connection, so I can't host the video. If I host the video from my side, because my outgoing bandwidth is so low at the moment, I'm having an ongoing issue with the internet provider. You won't hear it, B, it'll be very choppy, and then you won't be able to hear me respond in any way. So Stops has to host at this moment until my internet is repaired.
All right, can you still hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep, there's a bit of sort of noise in the background. Try now.
Me talking about something metaphysical.
So
like
just go back a bit now. Just go back to the beginning. We are live there.
Go back to the beginning, he says.
There
yes,
we
you know how
go.
difficult this is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Mohammed. Peace be on his head or something. But no, he's got the hijab on his head or something. I don't even know where this this hijab thing comes from, whether this is actually a name or whether this is just a nom de guerre. What's it called?
I don't know. It seems to be his surname. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm the one who's presenting a lot of the point. I want you to, what you seem to be, your line of argument is that something is so impossible or something so amazing. No, fine. I want you to, I'm going to give you one chance. I'm saying to you now, me talking about something metaphysical like heaven and hell is the same, has the same epistemic weight, and I'm going to say this to you right now.
Can anyone please explain to me what an epistemic weight is?
I'm just going to bring that up. I was actually going to bring that up earlier. I've got a general idea, but I want to make sure that I represent it accurately. So before I go and launch into that, let me just see if I can see it here. 1 second for me. I'll give a. Hopefully, I'm accurate with this. It's basically the reasons why carry a certain amount of credibility, for want of another word, or weight. So his claim is that the metaphysical so his reasons for believing in the metaphysical have the same weight as, I think he's still going to say it, I think you've stopped it, he hasn't quite got there yet, but talking about a scientist talking about quantum mechanics, I think is what he's going to say there. So his reasons why are as strong or as much weight as a scientist talking about quantum mechanics. I believe that's what he's going to say there.
Because for me, epistemic weight is nonsense. And when I tried looking it up, I couldn't find anything. So, I mean, I understand what he's trying to do, exactly what you are saying. But this is not something that if you go into the literature and you enter, you mentioned this somewhere, that everybody will understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, I think he's put two words together that might have been used in common language, but as you say, I don't see it a lot in philosophy per se. And again, if you're a philosopher and you can point to, or if you're not a philosopher, even if you're somebody knowledgeable on that, you can give us a link to that where it's talked about more in depth, then feel free to do that. But that's essentially what he's saying is, my reasons why for believing in the metaphysical are as strong, or as one can be as confident about them as the other, you know.
Yeah, that's what he wants this to be, exactly.
Yes, exactly. But let's also see now whether he justifies that. But listen what happens now. So play a little bit further and you'll see what happens now.
We've just been accused of being racists because we are picking on poor Muhammad.
Why we
has the same epistemic weight as a quantum physicist talking about something which is happening on a subatomic level.
Yeah. Just go a bit further, just 2 seconds more.
Refute me.
I don't have a problem. There we go.
Fine. So just because you don't like.
Refute me.
Yeah. So it carries the same weight as a quantum physicist talking about something on the subatomic level. And of course that's nonsense. But again, what we don't hear there is his reasons why. So the first question to ask there, obviously one needs to get used to doing that, is why do you say that? What are your reasons for making such an outrageous claim? But what does he say there? Refute me, i.e. I'm going to make an ontological claim. I'm not going to give you my epistemology. I'm going to claim that I have epistemology, but I'm not going to give it to you here, and now you need to refute me. And so that's where you need to jump in immediately.
And also, I mean, quantum mechanics is something that we use every single day. It's, what do you mean? It's as if you're on the wrong microphone. I'm still on the wrong microphone?
You're coming through super clear to me. So again, if you're listening, please give us a 1 if you can hear Stops clearly and he's audible, or give us a 2 if it's not so good now for you.
It's as if you're on the... Stop, sorry.
If some people can hear you, okay, we're getting some people can hear you.
Nah, you're fine. What?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay, Mr. Proclitier. Yes. Oh my God. Okay,
It might be one person.
Okay. You can stop typing ones. I know you love typing ones.
Yeah, Stops is fine. There you go.
All right. Then I don't need to comment any on this. This is Okay. Anybody else? And by the way, if anybody has anything to say on the video from the chat, then please pop in and stop and just say, listen, whoa, or something. I mean, you're as much a part of the show as we are. So whatever you have in questions or comments or something, feel free to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just typing in. Stops. 1 sec. I'm just typing in. If you want to get our attention, then please type this to get our attention. I'm putting it into the chat here. So type that, the Jinn&Tonic show, and then ask your question or make a comment, because obviously there's a lot of comments going there. That'll highlight it, and then we know that you want to ask us a comment or make a statement. Okay, go for it, Slops. Thank you.
I'm saying hijab is gay. Yeah, I think I have the suspicion too, but whatever, it doesn't matter really.
Judgments don't mean much to me. If you say, well, in heaven, it's pathetic, this and that, no problem.
It's on the ethical, moral...
No, but I'm just saying, just because something is seemingly unappetizing...
It's not healthy having that, having that attitude. I don't care about logic or quantum physics. I care about just general ethical, moral reasoning, which today you'd be more than happy to talk about how you go strict by the scriptures. So on the same learning, when someone says, oh, you know, you're going to have these entities that have a soul, you have the free will in heaven, but...
Why is it logically invalid? Tell me why it's logically invalid.
It's not about being logical.
So what's the problem? No problem. Alex, let me tell you something.
The same way,
sorry, I apologize.
Saying that men will get 72 virgins.
Yes.
What will women get?
And let me tell you what they'll get.
They'll get 72 men.
Well, let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question. Do men and women desire the same things in this world?
No. Okay, stop it there again. Stops. Notice what happens there again. You've just got to pay really close attention to what some of these guys are doing. I don't know that they even do it consciously. It just comes out of the mouth without even thinking. Okay, I'm going to tell you, let me ask you a question. This is not the way you answer a question. You don't answer a question with a question. And so this guy obviously asked, do men get, do women get 72 men? Okay, I'm going to tell you, let me ask you a question. No, that's not the way to do it. And notice also, unfortunately, the guy said, oh, I find this uncomfortable. And I have to be honest, as far as I can tell, and I'm happy if it stops for somebody else to point it out, Hijab does rebuke him for that, and rightly so, because he doesn't care if you find something uncomfortable. Everybody finds something uncomfortable. That's a subjective claim. You need to give reasons why you find something uncomfortable or immoral or whatever the case is, because that's what I think this guy's trying to say. But obviously, Hijab interrupted him a little bit, but he I don't know if you heard it there, but he said, oh, I find this uncomfortable, and then started to talk about the virgins. So you've got to give reasons. But of course, again, we're already into this guy trying to defend or refute the claim that's been made by Hijab, and Hijab at this point has not given his epistemology at all.
Friend. David, how are you doing, my friend? You're right. You're looking good today, man.
I saw you after you had your scuffle down the bottom there. Yeah.
So no. Do men and women?
Are all males the same? Are all females the same?
No, I'm asking you a question. Don't answer. Please do me a favor, Alex. Try and answer questions, because right now what you do is you answer questions with questions.
Yes, there are.
Okay, that's the irony. That's of course the irony. Just, Alex, please don't answer a question with a question. But if you rewind like two minutes ago, that's exactly what he do. I'll answer your question. Let me ask you a question. But Alex, please don't answer a question by asking a question. Please look in a mirror. consistency.
Same sexual desires?
No, I'm not saying that there are. That's not my question.
Oh, of course there are.
Look, Alex, Alex,
homosexual.
Alex, do me a favor. Look, because you've evaded. You've evaded.
You're trying to tell us what a male and a female is. There is enough variance there to suggest that we don't really know.
But Alex, what you've done there, twice I've asked you a question. Like, let's be fair to each other. Please. Alex, please. Alex.
Well, you know.
Listen to me. You've asked me about 5 or 6 questions, yeah? And I've answered them very directly. Yeah, no problem. Now I'm asking.
No, you haven't answered anything directly.
Has he answered anything so far?
Not a thing. Not answered a single thing directly. He hasn't asked him 5 or 6 questions. He's made a couple of statements, that's true. And Hijab hasn't responded to them, but he certainly hasn't answered anything directly yet.
Just 1 or 2, and what I want from you is you to really consider what you're saying. The first thing you said was that I don't feel it's exactly words. I don't feel comfortable with this. What that constitutes in philosophy is exactly an aesthetic value judgment. So in other words, because you see something and it's distasteful for you, wait, hold on please, that you're now willing to sideline it or invalidate it. Now, this is fallacious reasoning. What I'm asking you is, have you got any? Wait, hold on. Before you continue, because you have to allow one question to be asked.
Stop it there, stop for a moment. I just want to ask the question. And again, I'm asking this question rather than saying it's my, it's a statement of fact. But I don't think an aesthetic value judgment is a. What did he say? Did he say it was a fallacy? I don't believe it's a.
I also thought so. I also balked at this because for me this is total nonsense. Okay, he is now at. What? How can I see where he's at from the time so that I can go? Okay, let me go back to. I hope I'm hitting it to here.
It's 1 or 2, and what I want from you is you to really consider what you're saying. The first thing you said was that I don't feel it's exactly words. I don't feel comfortable with this. What that constitutes in philosophy is exactly an aesthetic value judgment. So in other words, because you see something and it's distasteful for you, wait, hold on please, that you're now willing to sideline it or invalidate it. Now, this is fallacious reasoning.
No, definitely not.
Well, I'm asking the question out loud as well to the audience as well. Is it a fallacy to have an aesthetic judgment value judgment? I agree that it's what he says. I don't feel comfortable. That is an aesthetic value judgment, but that's not a fallacy in and of itself. If he had no reasons, then possibly that's the case. But it doesn't seem in and of itself that it's a fallacy. But again, we can look that up. I'm not aware of it just being a fallacy on its own.
Well, the fallacy would be if he would say, I don't like it. So there I can definitely agree with Hijab on this, where if somebody says, I don't like it and therefore it's wrong, that doesn't matter at all, because it's not a moral judgment that we're looking for, but a factual one. And if somebody, and I think the whole discussion here is on the virgins thing, then I don't think it's a fallacy. If somebody says, well, I'm uncomfortable with it, okay, cool. Who cares? I mean, it's part of the thing and we're discussing it. So I don't care whether you're comfortable with it, because we're not judging anything based on morality, but on facts. So, nah.
I'm asking you is, have you got any? Wait, hold on. Before you continue, because you have to allow one question to be asked, then you can answer it. What I'm asking you is there any way you can, using your reasoning, show us how the precepts, the concepts, the descriptions of heaven as per the Quranic narrative is logically invalid? Can you do it?
Yeah, stop it there. Okay, you have, yeah.
This is not the way you do it.
Yeah, this is a shifting of the burden of proof. You prove it wrong. I've made an ontological or metaphysical claim. I've not given my epistemology or any reasons. You now need to refute this, and this is asked about back. But what he could ask here, and of course it's easy for us to watch afterwards. But what he could ask here is, okay, tell me about, give me more of your ontology. Tell me more about what you believe and why about this heaven. And then Hijab would go into something. Then you can, and I think you pointed it out. It was pointed out by philosophers the other night when I was listening. If a Muslim claims that God is perfectly moral, perfectly merciful, and has perfect judgment, those two are contradictory. You can't have those two. So if you're claiming those two attributes of Allah in this particular case, then you can immediately say no, that God does not exist by virtue of a contradiction there. And so one would need to elicit from Hijab more about this heaven that he believes in, because then you can look into and evaluate, well, what is his ontology? What is it that he's claiming about this heaven? Because just heaven on its own, what the hell does that mean? Maybe he's got an idea in his mind, and I've got an idea in mine, which is maybe heaven is what Einstein said, which is just the whole universe. The universe is heaven. So tell us a bit more about it.
Well, I have a problem.
Can you do it first?
The fact that I should, when it suits you, or when it...
But can you do that? Can you do that?
In certain circumstances, I should recognize my moral, ethical qualities, and then in some instances, I should completely ignore them, because the scripture is, what we know, and we don't have the capacity to actually appreciate it. So we have to complete logic.
See, you haven't answered my question.
So going back to what you say, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a very
Most
simple
things in
example.
stories in life. Tell me the answer.
And you said yourself, we're going to be tweaked as we enter heaven to accept what it is for what it is.
Alex,
Sorry, I did not understand what he was saying there. Did you pick it up?
No, I didn't either. I think he's sort of, this Alex guy is waffling a bit. He's probably got some point that he wants to make here, but he's certainly not being, particularly clear about it. So maybe he'll get to clarify it here, because I have to critique him in the sense that I'm not understanding what his actual critique is at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So it's not only me. Okay.
No.
I know what you're saying right now.
So when we go to heaven, when we have these 70 virgins,
72, according to the hadith in Tirmidhi, which some muhaddithin have said is weak, but majority say is strong. Go ahead.
You said they have soul. You said they are as like us as we are, but they don't have a free will except us.
No, I didn't say this.
Okay, let me ask you another.
I know. Hold on. I didn't say. No, because you just said something I didn't say.
That's not what you said. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's say I go to heaven, another female.
No.
Why is that this?
Because no. Hold on. That's different. Hold on. You've asked a question. If you want to ask a question, you have to wait for the response. The Hurul Ain described in the Qur'an, which are the virgins or whatever you want to call them, really, it's women. And the discussion's always been about women. But let me tell you something you didn't know. Let me tell you, I'm pretty sure you don't know this. Let me tell you something interesting.
Why you know everything?
Pardon?
Let you know everything.
I don't know everything. Do you know? Let me ask you a question, because here you've talked about Hurul Ain, as the Quran says, but what you haven't talked about is Ghilman. The Quran also talks about servant boys that will be created for the pleasure of women and men.
Yeah, okay. I thought he was going to omit this, but he actually is honest enough to say, yes, there are girls and boys for both sexes, yeah.
Now, what you've done is you've ignored that strategically, either out of ignorance or out of
voice.
No problem. Now I'm telling you.
Be a voice.
So, if the question is if your question was, why is it the case that men have servitude of a new creation of women, that are designed explicitly and exclusively for them, then the answer is that's not the case, because actually women and men also get these ghilman, who are servant boys, who will serve them in a similar capacity as with the hur, the men. So the point here is actually based on ignorant premise. Taking a step back from the so-called equality discussion that you've tried to put forward.
What equality discussion? He said that men get 72 virgins and the women don't.
But you're saying, and I've heard this before, that there are in fact boys that are available to women that go to heaven.
But they're also there for the men. So
okay, right.
You get the women, you get the girls, the huris, the ones with the high swelling breasts and all the rest. They're for the guys, and they get renewed as virgins after use. They are not available for the women. The women get their husbands. As far as I know, the boys in heaven are for the men, not for the women, not for the wives. The wives only get the husbands. They don't get the use of these young bodies. Well, I don't understand young bodies anyway, because everybody is supposed to be 31 with the permanent erection. So what is it that people are talking about? I don't quite understand where this would come from and why this is an issue all of a sudden. We know the description of heaven. I mean, this is quite. There's nothing untoward or secret or something. No, everybody is using the same hadiths here.
heaven, there'll continue to remain differences and not this kind of perfection where we are all the same. There's going to be females, males. We're going to have these differences, right? We're going to continue to have free will.
There will be differences, yes.
So if these differences continue to exist, surely at some point there's going to be a conflict.
Okay, Alex, listen to me carefully.
Similar
Listen to me carefully.
society.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't happen.
Exactly.
No one argues. They argue in speaker's corner. That's it.
Alex, listen to me carefully. Why is there, how do you know, here's my question, how do you know that such a concept as conflict exists?
In heaven?
Here.
Well, talk about...
We saw it as you were afraid to die.
No, hold on, one person at a time. If you want to, you can ask.
I know. I'll
Yes.
give you an example, right? You know, men, when it comes to like females, they compete. When it comes to resources, jobs, they compete.
Okay.
There is only one for one, unless...
How do you define conflict?
Well, there is like a friction where you get to a point where there is a certain resource, like a bit of land.
Okay.
You want to protect your family.
Disagreement.
A tree with apples.
No problem.
So
Disagreement.
It does come to resources. Yeah.
Okay.
However,
not always. About ideas.
In some cases, it could be an abstract idea. It could
Okay,
be like a
fine.
philosophy. It could
Excellent.
be a conflict in
Excellent.
ideology.
Do you know, Plato, he was the first major philosopher that I know of that he referred to a concept of universals. Universals. Now, what are universals? Universals are usually, in language, they're abstract nouns and or...
Stop it there for a moment. Okay, I think we're going off on a tangent, but it also, to be fair, though, Alex went off on a bit of a tangent here. If I understand it correctly, his objection is, hey, men and women are not getting the same in heaven. That's wrong. That's all he could have said, but he waffled all over the show. And now Hijab has picked up on something, and so they're off on a tangent now from the original claim. And again, we've not heard any epistemological claims from Hijab as to why, the metaphysical has got the same epistemic weight, because remember, that was the first question. So we're off on a tangent here, but to be fair, Alex seems to be a bit all over the show as well.
I was just not following anymore what they were trying to say.
Yeah, no, they've gone off on a little bit here. Let's just see if it comes back to something here.
But can you make out where he is going to go with Plato now?
No, I can't remember this bit.
Universals?
Let's
Any noun, a common noun, yeah? Now let me tell you what I mean by that. If I say white, what is white? Is something which shares a common characteristic, isn't it? So for example, if I grab a pearl and put it into my hand, and I ask you to describe the color of the pearl, you'll say it's a white pearl. Likewise, if I point to a cloud, and it's not necessarily a very heavy cloud, and I ask you to describe the color of that cloud, you'll say it's white. Thus, the pearl and the cloud have something in common. This is what Plato referred to as universals. We know, I asked you about what is conflict. You said conflict is where you have disagreement, whether it be on resources or abstract ideas, etc. Why? Because you have been able to identify a common characteristic between different things, entities which exist in isolation. And you've been able to call that thing, which is a universal, conflict, which is in English language a common noun. Now let me tell you something, educate you something. Did you know that Plato, the same philosopher that really understood this idea of universals, which he referred to as ideals, or he made the land or a mode of forms, he also outlined the fact that those universals are in fact metaphysical in nature. Wait a minute.
What is he talking about?
No, universals are abstract. I'm actually looking it up here. Pragmatically, universals are abstract, whereas particulars are concrete. There's nothing about them being metaphysical. I think he's confused here, and I think because originally he talked about the metaphysical, so he's trying to bring it back here. But if you look that up, universals is something that it talks about. So he's correct in a sense. It says there actually in metaphysics, a universal is what particular things have in common, namely characteristics or qualities. But pragmatically, universals are abstract. Example, humanity, whereas particulars are concrete. The person of Socrates, etc. I think this is trying to go back to, because if I understood it correctly, this guy Alex was saying that there's conflict in the sense that, hey, men and women don't get the same when they go to heaven. But now it seems to me, and I can be wrong about this, that Hijab has misunderstood conflict itself, and now he's going into something, he's misunderstood what Alex is talking about with conflict. But I could be wrong on that. Let's see if they actually get somewhere.
But correct me if I'm wrong. A universal is a concept.
Well, it's an abstract. So pragmatically, universals are abstracts. But in the realm, when you talk about metaphysics, but it's not a metaphysical principle from what I can tell here. It's an abstract principle, which is, it refers to something that things have in common. So it's perhaps a little bit of semantics here.
Is abstract. But metaphysics is abstract, and there are no descriptions. There are no commonalities. There are no attributes.
It depends what they are. I mean, I'm not a philosopher, so again, it could be that we're being.
Okay, I can't see where he's going. Let's see where he's going then. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
I'll tell him.
Sorry, yeah.
I have to tell the guy what I mean by that. I have to. No. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If it's metaphysical in nature, it does not exist in the real world. Thus, white or triangle or whatever it is, an idea that does not exist tangibly in the real world. Thus,
What?
Okay, I think
A triangle does not exist.
this it seems to me this becomes very much a semantic game here. But if you speak loudly and you want to make it a show for the audience, you can make yourself sound very intelligent. But I think there's more nuance to this than's being let on here. If you use the word triangle, yes, it refers to something potentially that is that doesn't exist in the real world in a certain sense. But like the color white, it's a reference to something else. Does that something else exist? Does something else exist? Is the attribute white that it refers to actually existing? Again, from what I could tell, philosophers have got different opinions on this. So I don't think it's as clear-cut as he's attempting to make it here.
if I were to ask an empiricist to tell me or to show me white, all they could do is show me multiple things tangibly which share the same characteristic of the color.
No. I mean, white is just something that we use to describe a type of reflection of electromagnetic waves, and that's all it is.
Yeah,
you can measure this.
It's a label that we give to
an attribute.
items where the light particles coming off reflect. Which one is it now? With light, they absorb black and reflect everything else, whereas black absorbs all other light and only reflects black, if I remember correctly. But it's simply just a label that we are giving to describe something we call color. But it's sort of going. Yeah, it's not going anywhere in particular here.
It's going nowhere because it's tangible. You can measure it. You can describe it. You can reproduce it. You can make predictions on it.
But many of these things are much more nuanced than let on at the park here. I mean, if you listen to philosophers talk about some of these topics, my word, they'll spend 2 hours just on one of these things. So, anyway.
Oh my God.
That's the example I aforementioned. Now, why is it ironic that you have here come forward and tell me that, look, conflict doesn't exist in heaven? It's because you've extrapolated a concept of conflict as per the universe in which you live in and the experiences in which you had and the commonalities or the thread you've been able to put with all the things which you consider as conflict, and you've superimposed that on another metaphysical thing which doesn't, which you...
No.
Hold on, Alex.
Your heaven is so extremely exaggerated.
Are you understanding?
It's about sex.
So the point is, when you're using
conflict, suddenly we have to.
What I'm saying, when we use common noun, this is what Ibn Abbas said. Ibn Abbas said, the only thing which is similar between that which is in heaven and that which is in this world is the name. Therefore, when you bring a concept like conflict, which is, as we said, a universal, and you try and superimpose it on heaven, which is a metaphysical concept, construct, which no one has seen except for, we say, the prophets, from Muhammad in particular, etc., then what you're doing is you're applying a fallacy of some sort, because really and truly,
Fallacy, man.
it's of course a fallacy. No, I'm not contradicting. How am I contradicting? Explain.
Okay, I think I understand what he's trying to say now. That this is something about the anthropomorphism of heaven. I think this is what he's trying to say. He's trying to put a barrier between what we know, our concepts here on earth in the natural world, and heaven, where he's trying to make heaven something completely different.
Yes.
So all the concepts that we know here, like conflict, like white, like all these universals, they don't necessarily exist in heaven. But this doesn't make sense, because heaven, right from the word go, is supposed to be very real. And the fact that he says, well, there's all these girls and boys, you know, for everybody available there, is a contradiction to what he's trying to do here.
And I mean, the same thing with wine and rivers of milk and stuff. Is his claim that they're not, it's not really referring to the things that we understand here on earth? Because he wants to, what he seems to want to do is draw a barrier, like you say, between the metaphysical heaven and, you know, the physical existence plane that we're on now. But when it's talked about in the Quran, the question to ask him would be, do you think that those things that the Quran refers to when they talk about heaven or people going to heaven, are those things unlike anything here on earth? So when they use those labels, wine or rivers of milk or virgins or whatever, what are they? Are they not referring to the things that we understand here in the physical world? And if they're not, then what are they referring to? Are we supposed to understand this, given what we understand about the world here and relate it to the heaven? Is the message, is that supposed to be the message? Or if it's not, what is God supposed to be talking about here then?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I think it's also the usual thing with communication, that people are not defining what they're talking about beforehand, and that they're just, you know, projecting their own understanding and their own experiences onto everything. And that is wrong. You need to first define everything. You first need to find out what it is that you're talking about before you can talk about it. I think.
Yes, anyway. I agree. And I'm definitely guilty of that. And virtually every speaker in the park is guilty of that as well. Not just Muslims, but Christians and atheists as well, is not defining what you're talking about. Because somebody says, oh, I believe in a God and heaven. Or what God do you believe in? What is the main attributes? And what is this heaven? Explain to me. Is it something that we can imagine? Is there any defining characteristics that are in heaven that it's similar to here on earth? Define more about it so that we can have that conversation. And that doesn't happen. So everybody's got their own version and they're using a label and they probably mean different things. So it's a good lesson for all of us.
And I noticed that with my chat with Nadir Ahmed, when we were discussing, is there embryology in the Quran? And then I asked him, can you please, before we go, can you define embryology? And he could not define embryology. And this is how I cannot understand how he is discussing embryology in the Quran and saying, yes, there is embryology in the Quran, when he doesn't even know what it is. You know, so this is, I don't understand how people do that.
Heaven, all the benefits or whatever you get in heaven is so earthly and it's so like consistent with what makes us happy.
As I said to you before,
sex and money and drinks.
So what? So what?
So what?
So what?
Let's say so what. It doesn't matter. But
so how does that invalidate
when it comes to the fact that we may have some idea of a conflict, you say no. That's just some sort of you know.
I'm telling you, the idea of conflict you've extrapolated from the world.
I'm saying if we continue to have free will, and
Alex, I don't think you understand. I want to try and break it down. It's my fault that you don't understand. It's not your fault. Our ideas that we understand. If I say the word love, yeah? Give me any abstract noun. Give me any abstract noun. Hate, love. Give me another abstract noun. Anything you like, yeah? Disagreement, happiness, whatever. Okay. All of that which we can understand, all of that which these words can necessarily denote or connote, must explicitly relate to my experience or your experience. Yes or no? Okay. The Prophet told us explicitly that heaven, ma khatara ala qalbi bashar. No one has experience of this place. Now, there are exceptions, like we said, Prophet Muhammad, etc. But generally, no one has experience. Now, the point is, if you haven't got experience of heaven, to speculate about the minutiae or the what happens, the details, is neither here nor there. It doesn't mean anything for me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So if you're saying,
So, but that seems to be, as I said, that seems to be problematic. Then, if you're going to claim that what the Quran says about heaven, is that supposed to represent heaven? Yes, I agree that nobody's had the experience of heaven, and one could argue not the Prophet either. But even so, can somebody give you a description of something that you haven't experienced? If an astronaut came back to Earth here and he'd been on the moon and he explained to you what it was like on the moon, would we have an understanding of what it was like on the moon, even if we hadn't experienced it ourselves? And to me, the obvious answer is yes. He could say it feels almost weightless. It feels like a 6. Imagine you jumping on here. Imagine this, that, and the other. We could have in our mind an image of what that would be like, even if we haven't experienced it. That seems to me straightforward. Maybe I'm missing something, but so I don't see his argument as being strong here at all.
No, like you said, I think this is what Alex is also picking up now, that on the one hand, he's claiming, well, it's all very lovey-dovey and supernatural and above everything else, and we can't grasp it. But then at the end of the day, you have rivers of milk and honey and sex and all that stuff, which is very, very much taken from our own perception here on Earth. And this is what Alex just said. So I think you can't, he's realizing you can't have it both ways. And this is what Hijab is trying to do. He's trying to make heaven this wonderful place. And at the same time, it's mysterious and wonderful, and you don't know anything about it. You can't know anything about it because it is metaphysical.
My idea of desire will be different there.
Therefore, we can conclude the fact that we are incapable of having any understanding of heaven.
No, I didn't say any understanding. See, that's a straw man.
When you look into it, that's what it comes to.
Alex, what I'm saying is,
we first begin with the premise that actually heaven is cool. You can have all these pleasures, and then suddenly it's all earthly pleasures. But then you take it further that we actually don't know. It's so complicated.
It's not. I didn't say it's complicated. Look, try and
unless you've had experience.
No problem. Of course.
Unless you've had experience of it, you cannot say a word.
Yeah, what I'm saying to you, listen, very explicitly what I'm saying, right? I'm explicitly telling you now that heaven is a place where we don't have any direct empirical experience with.
You have no idea.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Perfect. We have no idea. Yet the descriptions are meant to give us as much as is humanly and earth in the dunya way possible understanding of what exists there.
Even though when we enter heaven, we're going to get tweaked.
Let me give you an example. I know I've spoken of philosophical mumbo jumbo. I'm going to try and break it down to the lowest common multiple once again. Listen, if I were to tell you, if you were to meet someone, an Eskimo, I don't know if they exist in real life now. What? They do.
Yes, they exist in real life.
If I were to meet an Eskimo who's forever lived in an environment of snow, never had a television set, and always lived in an igloo, if that really, I've never seen an igloo in real life. And then I started to describe to the Eskimo, to the best of my possible ability, what sand is. I say, listen, I have language, he has language. I say, listen, sand is like snow, but actually it's a bit more grainy, you know? And I start trying to use as much hyperbole, as much adjectives, etc. as possible to explain what sand is. We cannot assume safely that Eskimo is gonna ever understand.
Yeah, you see, this is the point. This is it's not his fault, okay? He's deluded, he's brainwashed. This is his thinking. He doesn't understand. This is why we have science. And this is why science is so fucking accurate. This is why science is so meticulous. And this is why science is so, like I'm sorry to use the same word again, anal, about using the right word for the correct thing to describe this, that you have data, that you have all sorts of different descriptions of something before you go out and you even mention this. And this is why, yes, a scientist, no matter whether he's an Eskimo or whether he's from the Sahara, they will be able to understand, because to a scientist, for example, you can describe exactly what sand is, because all you need is the chemical, all the chemical elements that it's made out of. You can give it all the weight, the ratio, the size, the volume, and all these different sets and pieces of data that you can gather about sand, and you can then describe it using science. That is why science is so useful, because it makes things comparable. And this is what Hijab doesn't get, because for him, it's his mindset, snow is snow and sand is sand, and somebody in the desert doesn't understand snow and vice versa. No, this was true 1,000 years ago. Today, it's no longer true.
Yeah, but also, I think what he's talking about as a lay person, so like a an Eskimo that had never seen sand, you could still give, as you said, there's a scientific way of going about it, but for two lay people who are not scientifically literate, you could still give the Eskimo a fairly good description of what sand is, that he could imagine it to be there. The fact that he hasn't experienced what sand is, he hasn't physically picked it up or seen it with his own eyes, doesn't mean that you can't give him a fairly accurate description of what it is. And he could relate to it by the description itself. And I think that's where he's kind of going, no, you can't really do that. Because he's never seen it or experienced it himself, you can't give him a good enough description, and I just disagree with that. That might be the case for something metaphysical. If you spoke to an Eskimo and you tried to explain what a unicorn was, and he'd never seen a horse, that would be much more difficult to do. But if it was something more practical, but that actually then, that's sort of problematic, potentially from a metaphysical point of view. But like you've said, and he said it, and he's agreed, that the Quran speaks about things that we do understand here on earth. So if it's talking about things like rivers of milk and honey and virgins, those are things we understand. So we can imagine exactly what that will be like in heaven. Now, if his claim is that it's nothing like here on earth, please give me the evidence, and what is it like then? And if you're just going to claim like it's nothing like on earth, but we are giving you descriptions of exactly what it would be like here on earth, then that's a contradiction.
Yep. Are you reading the chat?
Not as much. Let me have a look again. See,
because there was a question about Ken Wilber. Are you guys familiar with the concept deep science, which is purported by philosophers like Ken Wilber? I've heard of deep science, but I do not know Ken Wilber. Do you?
I've heard that term being used, but I'm not familiar with it. I'm not sure if it's an actually scientifically acceptable term. It's just one of these buzzwords that somebody made up and is sort of flying around the blogospheres and some internet users. So, I mean, I can look it up while the video carries on here just to see if there's anything on it. Go for it.
The experience of holding sand in his hand. Now, the same thing applies now. The Quran, it does the best job in describing, in the only way it can, to people that have had certain experiences of the world, what kind of pleasure they will get in heaven. And it does so by showing all of, I mean, frankly, what's the most pleasurable? What's the most
small print? There's very small print that says, by the way, these are just kind of like analogies, because you just.
I didn't say they're metaphors.
Okay, so there's no metaphoric kind of.
No, I didn't say this. I said they are real.
Well, you to tell me that the Quran is metaphorically.
I'm not saying it's metaphorical.
No, but it's either going to be explicit in what it says, or it's going to mean something else that you're telling me right now. It says something else that I just don't know.
I'm saying it's real, but you can never comprehend it. Like Allah, He's real, but you can never. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. The Quran says that.
If you're going to go on the basis that you're going to read something that tells you something, and you're going to turn around, I'm not going to be able to comprehend it, and then what bloody hell virtue is there in following the rest of it?
Tell the scientist that when he's now doing quantum mechanics.
But that's a far-fetched.
No, it's not far-fetched. The only reason why you consider it far-fetched, is because when I use the word science, it's your God coming out now, so you have to defend him.
I don't give a shit.
No, if that's the case.
Okay, this is rather frustrating. This is straight up dishonest. Your God coming out there. Science is nobody's God. It's not a religion. And at the moment I hear this from any apologist, I know that we're now not being intellectually honest. And once you've explained this to them once and they do it again, now they're simply being just dishonest. all you have to do is look up the definition. Everybody knows this, but this is a common Muslim, or not necessarily just Muslim, but a common theistic apologetic these days. Oh, you guys, you atheists, you've got blind faith. Your science is your God, or scientism or whatever else is your God. It's your religion. I mean, stop doing this if you want to be taken seriously. I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, I'm going to correct you on this once. If you do it again, I'm now not speaking to somebody who wants to be intellectually honest.
And the worst is, it's just a religion. Okay, is that what you're talking about? Your religion is just a religion. Everything that you say is just based on faith, and we are just as bad as you are because we have facts and you don't. Oh boy, this is so hilarious.
The same fallacy.
Sorry?
Yeah, but this is the other part of the apologetic as well, to try and show the people out there, their followers, that in fact we're on a similar level. Their belief in a God is similar to our belief in the natural world, which of course is completely fallacious. But
Exactly,
they want to equate it because it makes them feel good, and because they realize the power of and again, I don't want to use the term, but it's what they use, atheism, i.e. not believing in a God, and there's certain other beliefs that go along with that, potentially, although different atheists have got different beliefs. But they realize the power of not believing and having good reasons and evidence, which they don't have, but they want to then equate the two. Because if they can, to some of their followers, make it appear as if, hey, the Islamic belief in this case is similar to the naturalistic belief, well, now we're on the same level, and it's almost a case of a flip a coin, or maybe just a little bit will swing you one way or the other way, and that's obviously not true. And so, but that's the attempt I see being made here.
Yeah.
By the way, just to the viewers as well,
somehow seems to level the playing field.
Yeah. That's the attempt. Yeah.
Okay.
Committing. By saying because we don't understand something, it's not true, or it's invalid, or it's illogical, it doesn't exist.
I just find it strange that when the God had this opportunity to make it clear that actually, by the way, little disclaimer here, it's a bit more than that than what you think. It required someone like you to come on board and try to say, actually, Ali, you can't understand this. It's more than that. And
So what's the problem? The Prophet told us that.
No, but it's your interpretation.
No, the Prophet said,
very clearly.
What does it say? Have you read the scriptures?
No, but I've heard it from you, right?
Okay, no, but it says in the Quran. It says in the Quran. It says mutashabih wa ghayra mutashabih. Mushtabihan wa ghayra mutashabih. It says that some things are going to be similar to what you've experienced, and some things are going to be completely dissimilar.
And how do we tell the difference?
What's the point?
How do we tell the difference? Where in the Quran does it say this? You can tell the difference between this one and that one. Please show me the verses that say that, or the hadiths for that matter, that clearly tell you what's the difference. If you're talking about things that we can experience or we've got some knowledge of in this world, then surely an all-knowing God would expect us to think that that's going to be the same in heaven. So it just seems like it's, I don't know what you'd call it off the top of my head, but it just seems like a hand-waving thing here. Hey, some things will be the same, some won't. You just accept it. That's the way it is. No, I'm not just going to accept it. How do you know which is which? You're making the claim. Please explain why you believe that and where do you get the reference from? But they're not challenged enough on this. And it's my fault too, or when I'm there, I don't do it as well. But it's easy to see in videos like this. Okay, where do you've made a statement, because when they're in the mood, they will challenge other people for it. Okay, you've made this claim. Where's the evidence for that? Where do you find that in the Quran? How are you assessing that? Because you've read out a verse. So what?
You'll recognize me because I'm going to be wearing a black T-shirt. Well, some people say it's white, but you'll recognize me. What the hell? What is the information now? What have I told the guy? That I'm wearing a black or a blue or whatever shirt? Nobody knows. The information is useless.
That's Quran.
No, I'm saying if I go to the park, then this is just the analogy.
Oh, right.
An'am or Al-A'raf, chapter 6 or chapter 7.
And if you, for the same Eskimo example you gave, if you went to the North Pole and you saw a man who has 70 virgins, who's living above some river, fruits, and he's having a great time, are you going to tell him you're in heaven? He's in heaven.
No, man. We believe in a realm which is above and beyond the worldly realm.
He doesn't seek anything else.
Heaven for us denotes a place which is a after-death experience. So he's not in heaven from our perspective. He's in the world. That, you know.
I think you also need to take into account the alternative to heaven according to Islam. Because you either have heaven, which is a really good,
you have hell.
You have hell, it's a really
bad place.
And you don't want to be in hell. You want to be in heaven.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are all.
Yeah, well, those are not the only two
How
options,
would
right?
he assume that?
Yeah. I mean, those
Well,
are
number
not,
one, no, but why would he assume this? Why would he think that everybody wants to go to heaven? I, for one, I would not want to go to heaven. I would be bored to death. Oh no, I'm dead already. I don't know, but I would be totally bored there.
well, the assumption, of course, Stops, is that everybody wants to, and again, this sort of does play into morality in a sense. Everybody wants what's best, i.e., wants to feel good, wants to have pleasure, and because their view on heaven is that it's the most pleasurable paradise, the underlying assumption, which you know one can grant is reasonable, that most people want to have pleasure and avoid pain, and given that hell is going to be the most painful, eternal, unpleasant place, nobody of their free will and open mind would want to go there. So I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption to have, given their worldview, to have that. You know, that's unless somebody can present something.
I disagree.
Say again?
I disagree totally, because I disagree because, number one, in heaven everything is fake. Okay, because you're getting virgins which are not virgins, because they're just remade. They've had sex with millions of men before you, but then they're being sold to you as virgins. They're not. Then you get rivers of wine. It's fake, because this wine doesn't get you drunk anyway. So what's the purpose of having rivers of wine if you can't have alcohol?
Okay.
So what is the point? Everything in heaven is fake. Now, the next thing is, we are being told that everything in hell is bad. Yeah, but hang on. We haven't heard the other side. This is the propaganda from the one side, from this God thingy, whatever this is. So there the propaganda is, look, it's all bad. It's all, I mean, this is like communists, or like the way that Muslims describe the West. And then they say, yeah, but there the West is so terrible because there, you know, everybody gets murdered and everybody's an alcoholic, and you know, rape is rampant, and it's a terrible place. I mean, the West is really terrible. Can please somebody get me a taxi to go there? But the fact is that they are always talking about the bad side. So I have not heard anybody from the hell side giving me the facts and telling me what really is going on in hell and what they think about heaven. So what we're looking at is one set of information, one point of view, and I do not accept it, because the lies that they are telling me about heaven are so grand that I don't believe anything they're telling me about hell.
Okay, but I mean, as far as I can tell, there is no other point of view of those two metaphysical claims, in the sense that there's nobody else making a claim that heaven is actually a good place, a bad place, or fake, and hell is a good place. So we only have, and remember, I suppose we're critiquing it potentially from their point of view, which is this. And so your objection is, well, hey, we haven't heard the opposite. We haven't heard the counterclaim, and I'm not sure if there is a counterclaim that can be heard. Nobody's putting forward anything like that. So I guess the question, but I guess my question to you would be then, and it's something I heard the other day. It's just a fancy, or potentially fancy philosophical term called particularism, which means they have got it seems to me, and again, you know, challenge me if you like, it seems to me they have got it's reasonable for them, given their worldview. It's reasonable for them, given their worldview, to accept that heaven is a good place and hell is a bad place. And in order for us to critique that, or for you to critique that, you would have to come and say, hey, no, the reason why you are wrong is X, Y, and Z, like you've kind of done here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they would respond potentially with, no, it's not fake, because remember, in heaven anything can happen. So don't think of, so the description of heaven is something similar to earth, but those virgins can be remade. Those rivers can, you know, make you feel wonderful, or whatever the case is, and immediately not feel wonderful the moment you think about it. I mean, those are all metaphysical claims that they could make, because all they have to claim is that heaven is miraculous. So some of the description is what we understand from earth, the rest is miraculous. And then that would be a counterclaim to your position, which is, hey, no, it's all fake. They will go, no, it's not all fake. It's just that you don't understand that miracles will happen there all the time. Because, of course, that's a metaphysical realm. Miracles are the norm there. I'm just putting it as a devil's advocate. So the burden of proof would be on you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but the burden of proof would be on you to say why it's not. They wouldn't have to give you the burden of proof to say that it's not the case. You would have to give them the reasons why, which you kind of alluded to there. But I think they could argue back against you quite strongly and walk away not feeling like that was a strong objection. So interesting, though. Yeah. I just want to welcome in as well.
Okay, but I just want to, before we do anything else, I just want to tell Steve I hate him because he's now put the song in my mind and I will not be able to get it out of my head for the rest of the night.
What is that? Heaven is a place on earth.
The song.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to welcome in.
Is a place on earth.
Why Religious and TJ Singh. How are you guys doing?
Hello, I appreciate you letting me back on. This is Why So Religious here. To start, I just want to say if y'all had time to watch the videos I made, I hope you're not upset that I made videos about your videos or anything. Just try to give arguments that can be used inside of these circular debates that keep going on. And for one, I'd like to say with this Mohammed Hijab going on, one thing is, where in the Qur'an does it say that he can use somebody else's philosophical avenue for proving Allah itself? And I made a video about this. Muslims do's and mostly Muslim don'ts. And the Quran says specifically, it is the sign. And if he wanted to quote Plato, I would say by Zeus. So you're telling me you're using a philosophical term by somebody who would say, by Zeus, this is my argument. No, like polytheists to make your argument for Allah. That makes no sense. It's rather ridiculous if you look at it from an Islamic point of view. And one thing I would like to also, what did I text you earlier saying that I was going to bring up? I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm at work, so I got a lot going on. But okay, with like Saracen the other day, he mentions the
hang on. Why so?
The Quran.
Why so? We want to keep it up. We want to just finish the video. So if you're welcome to stay on. If you're busy at work, just mute yourself and you can unmute as we go. I just want to finish critiquing the video, and then if you want to bring up something from last week's show, because I've watched some of your videos. If you post them into the private chat here, I'll post them for other people because I don't think you've got moderator rights. So I'll post them for other people to look at. But if we can, just for the moment, let's stick to critiquing this video. If you want to critique anything as you've done now, feel free. And then at the end of this, we'll open it up and we can talk about other things. So let's just see, how much time have we got left on this one, Stops?
Sorry, this is like 3/4. I can't read the numbers.
Okay,
we are on 18 minutes.
I think there's about 12
I think there's another 5 minutes left.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right, so stay on with us, Why so? And then if you want to critique about Saracens, and we'll talk about your videos after this.
I'll go muted.
Yep. Post the link to your... Post the link to your videos into this chat because you can't post it into the main chat. And then I'll post it for you. All right.
TJ, you good?
Yep, I'm good.
Maybe TJ had a question to the video.
Yeah, I just...
Okay, so you don't have a question to the video?
I had a comment, but okay, I guess I'll save it. Continue.
Oh, it's going to get it.
Mumble jumble motivations.
But how do you know?
I mean, why, for example,
yeah, that's a value judgment.
People work there.
What you haven't done, Alex. Thank you, Alex. What you have not done.
There's so much inconsistency.
It's not. No. You can't say. You haven't got a right to say it's inconsistent. You can say I'm not comfortable with it, which is what you said before. No problem. You can be not comfortable with something, which is true. You could be deeply uncomfortable with the fact that 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 and not 1 as a Christian, but it's true. Now the point I'm making to
it's important to be comfortable, no?
well, it's not always.
It's important to be. You're a Muslim.
That's not how we find out truth, by your comfort.
Nobody just smacked the Quran in your face and said you're Muslim. Do as you're told. You read it, you decided, and you followed it, and you're exercising your free will.
Okay, so why is it? What you have? Look, this is what we're talking about now.
You don't just.
You can look. What you're doing here is fine.
You're at peace.
No, what you have a right to say is I don't feel comfortable, I don't like it, no problem. That's not, that's a subjective value judgment, you're entitled to it. I would say it's neither here nor there. Everyone can be, I don't like drink, I don't like certain drinks,
but
no problem.
The grand scheme of things matter to you committing to be, unless you're an absolute idiot.
No.
Unless you're you're gonna need to exercise your free will or your virtue to be a Muslim. So at some point you're gonna actually think about it and actually think, this makes sense to me. That's why I'm a Muslim. You don't
no, but what your barometer for sense has not become a logical one, it's become a subjective value judgment on aesthetics and feelings and how you feel comfortable.
Call it free will. Your free will, you have the ability to exercise your free will based on.
No, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. You don't make a value judgment on truth using how comfortable you feel with something. You can feel uncomfortable with the truth.
It's a bad word. But we are generally talking about something that you
have to be fair now, Hijab seems to be correct on this in the sense that this guy is obviously making subjective judgment about how uncomfortable he feels about something and then wants to try and claim that it's true or it should be true. And he hasn't given any reasons for doing so. He's just seemingly said, hey, this is not comfortable, I don't feel good about this or whatever. But he hasn't given reasons that other people can evaluate as to why, apart from the sort of conflict thing, which again wasn't very clear. So, I mean, it doesn't seem to me, and again, unless I'm missing something, it doesn't seem to me to be making a strong, coherent argument. It seems to be kind of all over the show, and it's more subjective. Hey, I don't like this, and he's, hoping that he can find some way to justify it. But I haven't heard any of that so far.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what I actually, a lot of times I don't understand what his contention here is, because yep, that's what it says in the Quran and that's the way it is. So yeah. I now know what jinns sound like.
You can hate something which is good for you.
Why
I like that. Maybe someone could get me a coffee before I can start this next one.
No, it's very simple. You didn't just.
The thesis of Islam is most compelling to me from a logical perspective.
Oh, logical.
Yeah, rationally.
So yeah, so all these words, excellent.
And also because I believe I'm predisposed to believe in a God.
Oh, you're predisposed. So you're saying that some may not have that.
No, everyone has this.
Everyone has this. But in your case, it's Islam, right?
There you go.
So, no, look, Islam is submission to God, right?
Yeah.
That one there, immediately, that needs to be challenged straight away. That whole thing that everybody has this belief in a God. Obviously, I don't know, is this a Christian, this other guy? It seemed to be. He suggested he was a Christian, in which case he's not going to challenge that. He's just going to accept everybody has a belief in a God. Obviously, where's your evidence for that? In fact, I feel like we've got counter evidence to that. Hey, Steve, welcome. How are you? Are you there? Hello, Steve. Good evening. All right, it seems like Steve's muted himself for the moment. Stops, are you there? Carry on. You're muted, Stops.
Can you hear me now?
I can, Steve.
Predisposed to believe in a God.
Good evening.
Oh, you're predisposed. So you're saying.
Sorry. Yeah, hi, good evening, Steve.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep,
Cool.
Carry on.
Excellent.
Your thoughts so far on what you've heard?
Bollocks.
Okay, short and to the point.
Not you, the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on playing and I'll chip in.
It's muted, Stops. Unmute yourself, Stops.
All kind of logical reasoning or what makes it logical.
Oh, if I mute myself, it mutes the whole video.
Yeah, of course. It's muting the output to Hangouts.
Oh, okay. Because I was coughing, so I muted myself. I didn't know that I was muting the entire video.
Yeah.
So how the hell do I mute myself here
No, I think you just have to
I'll
pause
have to
the
work on
video,
that.
and mute yourself, and then we know that you're coughing or you've had to do something. But if you left the video running and you mute yourself, then we
Because I'm wondering how I can mute my microphone without muting the entire thing. Okay, well, there's still things I need to learn.
Who cares about what makes us comfortable and
No, but
uncomfortable?
the fact is that you chose Islam, not just because of some random event. You actually pray.
Yeah, okay. But Alex, with respect to you, great respect. I know you, I like you, right? But what I was going to say to you is that you have not, unfortunately, been able to. You have not been able to put forward a consistent, logical case against any of the precepts of Islam.
I was intrigued.
Yeah, you don't need to.
I was intrigued, and I was more than happy to be convinced. I'm still left with wonder, and I'm
no. But the reason why you have to explain is because of your desires, literally, because of what makes you comfortable. Yes, yes.
When I look around, my desires are actually not as hot as some of the.
It's exactly because, according to your own admission, it's because of your desires.
It's very important to me.
Your desire, and you know what's ironic? Let me, Alex, what makes you comfortable in this life?
It's not about confidence.
No, I'm asking you a personal.
It's not about confidence. It's about the truth. Ultimately.
Okay, now you're changing your tone.
What do you mean tone?
Before you were saying this about how comfortable you feel.
You said yourself when you read the text, when you read the scripture, you made some logical reasoning. Those are the words you used.
Yeah, I didn't say comfortable.
You're telling me actually, I should ignore. How do you come to a reasonable conclusion? It needs to be some way, in agreement with your understanding, right? And if I can say, hey, that makes me comfortable, we can't tell me, you have to ignore this comfort.
Let me ask you a question. What makes you comfortable in life?
It's not about comfortable, dude.
No, I want to know.
It's about
what do you like to do?
The truth. It's about the truth.
Alex, do you know?
About the truth.
Okay, fine, no problem.
For you, for others, it's about having virgins or sexual or some pleasure or conforming to a God that looks out to them, right?
Let me ask you a question, bro. Let's not pretend to be all righteous here, right? No. You're all over the place, literally. You're literally all over the place. I've never spoken to someone very recently that's all over the place.
Okay. That's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna agree. Alex is a bit all over the show here, but I just love that sentence of hijab. I've never spoken to somebody recently that's been all over the show. I've never spoken to somebody recent. I've not spoken to somebody recently, or I've never spoken to somebody that's all over the show. But putting those two together, I just thought that was amusing. So, I'm amused by small things. I've never spoken to somebody recently. Yeah, that's brilliant. But Alex is all over the show here. I think we're all sort of not following his train particularly well. At one stage, he does care about truth. The other thing, he's not comfortable. So he's at the very, if we were extremely charitable, the best we can say is that he's certainly not very clear on what his objection is. And he's not being consistent with it throughout either. So I think Hijab is having an easy ride here.
Let me tell you something.
Maybe I'm crazy. Aren't there many of us who are all over the place?
All right.
No, right. We're not finished. Go.
Okay.
Ask me a question.
Let me finish this video, right? Why I say you're all over the place? Clearly, in the beginning you said, I'm not comfortable. That's your reasoning. Your reasoning for not accepting heaven and hell, as per the Islamic scriptures, you said, I'm not comfortable with it. Yeah, fine. You can have your problems with it. You can have your aesthetic value judgment. But I said to you before, your degree of comfortability does not necessitate falsity. It doesn't show that something is true or wrong. You said I don't care, but that's how I feel. All right, no problem. We'll take a step back.
My response to that is when it suits you in the virtues of giving to charity and everything else, those reasoning of what's good and bad matter. But when it comes to the fact that in heaven certain values like having sex with so many and then
what's wrong with that?
Free will, you must ignore that. Currently, with the values that you as a Muslim today.
I told you it's going to be different.
Okay, let's break it down. Make it simple. On Earth today.
Yeah, we've been through this, man. We've been through this.
Expectation of others that don't have free will.
But Alex, we've been through this.
Suddenly in heaven, it doesn't matter. So that's a.
No, I didn't. That's not what. Look, Alex, please. You seem not to comprehend. No. You're not. You're not making sense because I said to you before that what you're...
Why do you not have 72 wives today?
I can only have 4.
Because of the scripture, right?
That's my maximum, right? But you know, according to the law, you can only have 1 in these things. Yeah. Go ahead. No, look.
And I'm guessing that women want to have 70 boys, young boys, you said.
I didn't say anything. What are you talking about?
Because when I asked,
this guy's going from animals to boys. He was talking about animals, and now you're talking about...
When I asked you that men get 70 conversions, what do women get? They get a bunch of boys?
I didn't say they get a bunch of boys.
What do they get?
You've got... Okay, Alex, listen to me. Look at me. Look at me. It's on the cameras. I feel like... No.
I don't even want to be on the...
No problem. What I'm going to give you a chance to do, forget the cameras, you can recap what was already said. Because sometimes, I'm not saying I'm bad at this. I'm bad at giving explanations, all right? No problem. But if you listen to what I say twice or 3 times, you won't need me to keep repeating myself. So those issues we've dealt with. What I'm going to say to you is as follows, yeah? Forget about all of this. Forget about how comfortable you feel. Forget about these things. In a nutshell, heaven, according to Muslims, is a place where you get everything you want, and you will not want that which you cannot have as per the morals of Islam. So you can't have sex with animals or children or whatever. Done. Hell is where you get an eternal punishment forever. Now, heaven and hell are the recompense, the ultimate recompense of people's having gone through some kind of test in life and then being judged and assessed by the all-knowing, the all-wise, which we believe is God. That's the thing. Now, we don't know exactly what's in heaven.
Can you clarify this or give us a little bit more info? He claims that hell is the eternal punishment. Some Muslims I speak to say that's not the case, that you might go there for a short while, then you might not. You may not stay there, etc. Some people who are not Muslims might get judged and not go to hell. So there seems to be all different views on this. Can you sort of give any thoughts on this?
This is true. There's all different views on this because it's not clear. There is a dubious sentence in the Quran which says you will taste hell, but it should be in the conditional sense. You would taste hell if you wouldn't be a Muslim. But because the Quran doesn't do that, it says that you will taste hell, then people say, well, what happens is Muslims first go to hell, and there they stay an appropriate amount of time, which is commensurate with their sins that they committed in life, just to have a taste of hell. And then they are taken out, they are saved and put into heaven so that they will even more greatly appreciate the wonders of heaven. But not everybody interprets that sentence like this. People say, yeah, it's intended to be theoretical, that this is a warning for the non-believers so that they will go to hell for their eternal punishment. And our belief excludes us from this. So there's different ways of interpretation.
Right, okay, cool.
How it functions, I can't give you details. Right, the Prophet told us that. But we do know some things which potentially we could expect, but it's nothing that we can envisage in a full sense. Make sense?
Yeah. Cool, man. Great. Thanks.
Okay. So, not the best video. I think Alex wasn't clear. Obviously, Hijab made his biggest claim in the beginning was never substantiated, which is that his epistemic weight the epistemic weight is equal or similar to, his metaphysical claims are equal or similar to, a quantum physicist looking at, subatomic particles. So I never heard anything about that. So, and then it just sort of went off from there. So I don't think it was the best example. And it certainly wasn't from Alex's point of view either. He just wasn't sort of clear from my point of view. I don't know. Please, I open the floor up to Steve and to everybody else. What's your thoughts on that? And then we can open up and talk about anything else.
I don't have anything to add.
But you're a lesbian now.
I am, yeah. In case people weren't watching.
Into girls.
Absolutely.
Into girls, okay.
Was that some banter in the chat there, Steve?
Yes, it was a bit of a side comment in the chat. Being accused of bisexual,
I picked it up
homosexual.
because I just wanted to.
What's your gender then, Steve?
Because the
seems to be a bit of a delay on the Hangout here.
I'm a male lesbian.
We'll pull this on for the male lesbian.
Are you sure you're male though? You know, there's like over 50 genders.
Last time I checked, yes.
It's like over 50 genders now, I think so.
I am
Does seem to be a
binary.
delay.
Is bisexual gay or is bisexual straight?
It depends, I guess. I mean, a bisexual person.
Oh boy. There was somebody who put a video out on Facebook with some people in a Christian church and they were dancing. And this was made out to be horrendous. And I thought this was lovely. It was wonderful. Why can't people dance? I think dancing is wonderful. I like music. It's yes, it's mind altering. It's mood altering. It's wonderful. It's great. And even kids, and this is innate. I mean, children, babies will rock to music. They will move their limbs. They will go and follow the rhythm that is being played to them. So that is definitely innate. And what I then did is I took a video that I found of an interpretation by, what was it, Halliday, Mr. Vane, and some girls dancing in this, or even some guys, in a really, really wonderful, I don't know if you know electric swing and if you know shuffle. I think it is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely wonderful. So I put that as a contrast program, saying that what is wrong with dancing? Look at these people. They're dancing, they're happy, they're not grooming girls, they're not killing, they're not blowing themselves up. There's nothing that they are doing wrong. They were definitely not harming anyone else. They were just there dancing for themselves and having fun. I think that's much better than anything that Islam can promise me.
What are traps? Are traps gay? I don't know what traps are.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term either.
Maybe it's in a very deep gay scene that we're not in. Silurian, are you in a deep gay hidden scene that we're not aware of? I don't think he'll answer. Or she. No. Yeah, good point, Ray. This isn't a gay chat room, is it? Is that what you're looking for, Silurian? He's gone shy.
There's a lot of gays in Islam, though.
There are no gays in that village. How dare you say that? Traps are transsexuals, basically.
Basically,
not a tranny room either.
Transsexual. What is basically transsexual?
Such an obsession
I've never
with sex.
understood the term. What?
Why do Muslims have such an obsession with sex and bum sex in particular? Why is that?
What is transsexual?
Oh, you should, come on, stop. You should know this. What's wrong with you, bro?
No, really, I don't. I mean, I know quite a lot of things, but transsexual, I don't know, because is transsexual if you're a man with boobs or what?
No. Just overweight.
Those are called man boobs, bro. That's completely different.
No, that's not what I mean. No, those are lady boys. No, lady boys are the. Oh my God! Come on, what are the lady boys?
Chicks
are
with
the feminine-looking guys. Chicks, no dicks, no.
Chicks with dicks.
Chicks with dicks. Oh, is that what you call them? Okay, for me, they are men who are just made out to be a little bit more feminine. And I mean, if you go to Thailand, for example, they have complete shows around this.
Oh, I know.
And you fall in love with these things. They are so wonderful. But then at the end of the day, you need to remember, because they take the panties off and then out comes the goods. So that's a shock. Anyway, is that what you call transsexual?
Yeah, one type of, yeah.
But never mind. It's
Type of. Are there different types of transsexual?
well, a man who thinks he's a woman and a woman who thinks that she's a man. So they're trying to transition. Hence,
Okay, this I know. Yeah. This is
Yeah.
yes. Okay, but I didn't know the physical part. Okay. All right. So this was the educational part of the evening on the Gin&Tonic show, where we clarify. I mean, you can't tell us that we're not versatile and answering the questions that are pertinent in this world today. Definitely, we are.
Is the video over?
The video is over. I have a second one lined up if anybody wants to go for it, but I think we've gone 2 hours. I think it's enough. We can do this some other time. Pre-op and post-op trannies. Stop spamming. Come on. Trannies are old women, isn't it? Oh no, trannies are transsexuals. Grannies are the old women. Yeah. Oh my God. Did you see? I'm so straight. I don't even know all these things. Actually, I'm a little bit embarrassed now that I don't know these things.
And this all started from traps, and I'd honestly never heard of traps. I thought they're things you caught mice.
Mohammed never specified the traps. Okay, that's one. Yeah, okay. Mohammed Hijab should go to Thailand. She doesn't.
So
if you don't go to heaven, you go to Thailand. Yeah.
Did anybody else bring up the point?
Okay. Are there any qualified utterings being made here?
Grand sexuals.
Knowing Christianity, critiquing Islam. Can you talk about the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, praised by the Quran playground? Okay, what should I tell? It's a story in, I can't remember where it is in the Bible. It's a story, I can't remember where it is in the Quran. Both talk about some sleepers who, after some years, in the Quran, I think it's a weird story because it's 300 years plus 9. And in the Quran, God doesn't even know how many people were there. So, but otherwise, it's the same story that some people get lost in a cave and they get out the next day only to find out that 300 years have passed, or in the Bible, it's 100. I don't know what else is there to say. It's the people and the animals, and God doesn't know how many.
It actually says that only God knows how many, and that the believers need not ask questions about it. So, I mean, just a little correction there. The Quran does say that Allah knows, but only Allah knows, and that those who tend to disbelief are the ones who will question about how many people are actually in the cave.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How big do you think Muhammad Hija's manhood is? Has he alluded as the size of horse? No, that's in the Bible, isn't it? Where the men have penises the size of horses and ejaculations like a donkey, or was it the other way around?
She was lusting. She was lusting after the men of her former land with genitalia the size of donkeys. And ejaculation, I can't remember exactly the amount or whatever. But
wasn't that in Ezekiel?
I believe so. I don't have my notes on me, but I did a video where I mentioned that as most people's favorite quote in the Bible as far as atheists or skeptics, because they think it's funny. But to me, I don't, on mine, I use my favorite in the Old Testament is when you can beat your slave, right? That's what it says. But to me, that's not really the issue. To me, what the issue would be is that I look at it from Jack Daniels' point of view. The reason Jack Daniels died was because he kicked his safe and he got gangrene inside of his foot. Well, at that part of the Torah, Old Testament that I was reading at, the reason it's my favorite verse is because God says, Yahweh says, that as long as the slave arises after 2 days, then you're not at fault. There's no punishment for you. So what about gangrene? Did God not know about gangrene and that the person would die a month later and then nobody's at fault? But I do believe what you asked is true, that it's in Ezekiel.
That's why I actually like the Old Testament. There's better stories.
Well, I mean, to me, the best parts of any religion are the ones that were before humans actually knew anything about, science or the reality of the world around them. And that's the reason I think that gangrene was a good way to tackle that topic. There's another one where not many people who follow the Bible will admit this, but the Bible supports abortion. I know this is the Gin and Tonic show. We're supposed to be talking about Islam, but since we went over a quote, I figure I'd bring this up too. The Bible actually supports abortion as long as the man believes that the woman committed adultery. And then if the man says that, he takes her to the rabbi, the council, and they make her drink what's called the bitter water. And this is to cause a miscarriage. But if the woman is honest, that she has kept her chastity, then of course Allah is going to step in and make sure that this poison doesn't cause a miscarriage. That's how much faith you have to have inside of the religion.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I stepped away there for a second, so.
So I was wondering, did anybody bring?
And what does the moon say?
Video? I'm sorry.
No, Stops was just asking about the moon. I didn't step away to actually check the moon necessarily, but
was it cleft asunder?
No, it was supposedly a blood moon tonight, but I can't see anything out there. I don't know if anybody else can see. It's supposed to be an eclipse of the moon. The moon should be red, and the reason, just for interest, the scientific reason, as opposed to people making stuff up, is because the light rays that come across the Earth, the blue rays get absorbed by the atmosphere, and so whatever rays go across and hit the moon are primarily more on the red side of the spectrum. So that's why you get this orangey red sort of moon as a sort of an eclipse.
This is a lunar eclipse, right?
Yeah.
So I hate to interject or whatever, but just because I'm at work, I don't have much time. I just want to know if y'all did have time to watch the videos, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, because just like with the video I made about Harris, I like for people to be able to see my video so that they can comment on it, and that they, I try not to take anybody out of context, and I try never to mislead people. And I just try to inform. I know my videos are very simplistic, but that's the point, is so that you can just learn, screenshot, save, or whatever. But if there's anything that y'all feel, that I said or did wrong, I would just like to know that, so that I can make a correction the next time if I do a video recording the Gin and Tonic.
I haven't got into it in depth. I just watched it briefly, but if you give us the links into the private chat, in other words, into the chat of this Hangout, I'll post it into the main chat for other people to go and watch. So I've just gone over it briefly, and Stops had a quick look at one or two. I think my only thing would be to try and keep it shorter. Just make it as concise as possible. Don't feel like you have to repeat anything, and just keep it as short. It's almost like you might either want to bullet point it or script it out so that you keep the video as short as possible. But apart from that, it seemed fine.
Okay, just a couple of tips for if Muslims try to do a couple of things that they've done before. If one tried to say, like Sarah said, that Islam came around and tried to eliminate slavery in the future, just think of it this way. The only person that can ever be freed from a Muslim is a Muslim slave. So you can't really say, even if Islam conquered the whole world before slavery was taken away through Western powers, and then they took all the people, the Christians, the Jews, Eskimos, whoever, and enslaved them. The only way that they could ever become free is to become Muslim. And what's funny about that is, if it eventually did take away all of slavery, then the Quran would contradict itself, because the Quran says multiple times that not everyone will be believers, that most people will not be believers. And then if the person says, oh, well, they're just switching over so that they're not slaves anymore, then you got them with another Quran tradition, which is it says in the Quran that only Allah knows what is in a person's heart, and only Allah knows who is a true believer and who isn't. So you got them being a hypocrite there. But all right, I have to get back to work. I just wanted to shed a little dialogue.
All righty, cheers for that. Post the links if you get a chance, then I can put it into the main chat.
Okay, they're in the messenger if that's available to you.
Oh, I'll have a look there. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
I'm just going to put Y on mute there because I can hear some stuff in the background there. Hopefully I can anyway. Cool. Is there anything else any of you guys want to add? Is there anybody else that wants to join, or has any other thoughts in the chat? Let us know.
I thought it was funny how he brought Plato into the whole conversation. I found that kind of funny. Because I'm thinking to myself, because Plato believed in this other world where everything was going to be perfect. And yet he didn't say anything about that, about how he could prove that or how he could somehow make that plausible. So it'll be interesting to see, because Plato was a very idealistic thinker, and people forget that. I mean, if you don't believe me, just read his Republic. He was clearly, an idealist, and it'll be interesting to see, how he would justify that, that sort of idealism, that there's an ideal world beyond this one. So I found that kind of funny, to say the least.
Sometimes, because Hijab has obviously read a little bit on philosophy here or there, or whatever the case is, so sometimes he wants to throw that in, because it does make you sound intelligent. I'm not sure how valuable it is to the actual conversation itself, but when you throw out something and you make a quote, and again, this is something that for me, my view is that a number of people, Hijab and certain others, are doing this not to convert other people. They know, or I think they've got a reasonable suspicion that people like us will not be converted by the nonsense they speak. The entire purpose of this is as it was something that the philosopher Stephen Law recently said on Facebook. It's like a smokescreen for their own followers, because if their own followers will feel more confident when they hear somebody speaking with certainty, they're not going to go look up any of these claims themselves. So if you hear their man speaking with certainty on some topics where he sounds like he's intellectual, that for them gives them almost like a sense of comfort. Here we've got an intellectual speaking on our behalf. Whatever he's saying must be true. That makes us feel better. And I think that's what they're appealing to. And he's not the only one. There's at least one other person in particular, which I'm sure we all know, that does exactly that, knowing that nobody that's critical or that's going to go and look up the claims that are being made will ever be convinced by that, because of course the claims are either half true or completely false. But it's more a case of, I'm saying this for my brethren out there who I know are either ignorant or credulous and will follow whatever I say, and that's what the purpose is. It's almost like a propaganda exercise, and the whole purpose is to look good at Speaker's Corner and sound as if you know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, in my personal view, I just think that, he picked the parts he liked about Plato and, obviously try to, prove his point, but he didn't go into other, Platonic ideas, which I thought was kind of funny. But I mean, when you pick and choose the parts you like and, to try to prove your point, I mean, that's what's going to happen. So, but I mean, I think this proves to a bigger point where people are actually falling for these arguments and actually converting, and thus changing the demographics of your country. So I think that's an important thing that you guys should also be aware of, is demographics. Because I mean, once they get the numbers, I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, exactly. And what we see elsewhere, and it's not when you say the numbers, it's also not the moderate Muslims. They will just follow along. It's the more vocal or the less moderate Muslims that push or drive it, from what we can see. And so many of the others just follow along, get on with their business. Well, it's not necessarily that they'll do what they're told, but they're more likely to vote for somebody that claims to be Muslim.
Hedging their bets, I think, is more of a proper term for that. I think you're just hedging their bets, and then, once the situation presents itself, I mean, you just have to ask a simple question to some of these people, like, if an Islamic army came and attacked Britain, is it permissible for the Muslims living in Britain to actually defend Britain against those Muslims coming in? I mean, that would be a nice question, I think. A fair question. but nobody asked the hard questions. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of pathetic because it's more about. I mean, we can nitpick about certain things about the Quran and how it, how it's contradictory or how, certain stories may have been fabricated or whatever. But when it comes down to like the nitty gritty, I mean, those are the kind of questions that we need to start asking. Honestly, or those tougher questions. And nobody's really doing that, I feel.
I mean, there are the odd voices, but they're often decried. There's not enough people doing it. I would agree with that. We do some of that here, and people like Douglas Murray over here, and Hitchens used to do it over there, and I'm sure there's many others, many of the ex-Muslims as well. So there are people, but certainly not enough of them, and certainly not people in positions of authority. I can see.
And I think right now in Britain, your population of Muslims is what, like 4 to 5%, right?
Yeah, I think it's 3.5 or 4%, something like that. Around 3 million or just under 3 million. Yeah.
Okay. So just wait and see until that population doubles, and then you guys will be in for quite the experience, to say the least. So.
Yeah, and what we obviously want to do is have the moderate ones speak out against anybody else. It's a case of, and that's what Australia did as far as I can remember. This is the rules of this country. We welcome in people. If your views or your beliefs or your ideology conflict with the rules of this country, you jettison yours and you accept ours. If that's not acceptable to you, then you need to find somewhere else to go and live. I think that message is not being sent out clearly. We don't mind having other people here. There's no problem with that. I'm sure you don't mind in America, but there's certain rules. If I come there and I believe in, I don't know, Zeus, and I think everybody should walk around in sandals, you would be, rightly tell me, hey, Rob, that's not the way we do it here. We wear shoes, or we go barefoot, or we wear trainers, or whatever the case is. Here's the rules. You're not going to insist that everybody does it your way in my country. It's like coming to my house, shitting on my furniture, and then telling me that, I'm not being a polite host when I call you out for doing that. No, it doesn't work that way. So,
immigration too, that whole thing, it needs to be reformed. I think you need to start prioritizing about who you bring into the country. I think that would be beneficial too.
Yes, well, I'm not sure if we're ever going to get there. Immigration here, always a hot topic, but it doesn't seem like anybody's got clear ideas on how to actually implement something. But again, I'm sure Steve has chatted more about that and spoken to more people on that regard. I think we do need better control of our immigration, and it's not happening. And I'm not sure it's going to happen with whatever sort of Brexit seems to be not happening at the moment. So who knows?
To be honest, Rob, I have no worry about immigration and no worry about immigrants. But could we just pick up on some of the comments in the chat room about the ISIS supporters?
No.
The ISIS supporters that are going to Speaker's Corner, because someone's saying in the chat that, I shouldn't go to Speaker's Corner because they're going to kill me, they're going to attack me. Bollocks. They can't even speak out on their support of ISIS. They're absolute flagrant cowards.
Are you talking about those couple that you had that conversation that was recorded on?
Yeah, there are increasing numbers that are going there every week recently that are absolute Anjem Chowdhury supporters. Guys, twats that used to hang around with Anjem Chowdhury. They used to be very visible members of Anjem Chowdhury's crowd, and they're all starting to crawl out from under their stones and appear at Speaker's Corner. One of them has recently been arrested, Ricardo McFarlane.
Has he been arrested again?
Yes, yeah, he's in prison. He's currently back in prison, and the police have told me that. But
Chowdhury, I heard his sentence got reduced. He'll be out by this year.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, Anjem Chowdhury, I heard his sentence got it got reduced, and he'll be out by this year.
Yeah, no, Anjem Chowdhury will be back on the streets in October this year. But it's very, very clear that his supporters are creeping back to Speaker's Corner. There was a couple of them initially. Now there's 4 or 5 of them that are appearing week on week on week in Speaker's Corner. And they're tiptoeing around, trying to be careful what they say and what they don't say. And people keep challenging them on, do you support ISIS? Do you support ISIS? And that's why I'm saying they're absolute cowards. So, they're not going to kill me when they can't even admit their support for ISIS. So I am not one jot scared or intimidated by their presence. But it does worry me that the state and the police seem to be allowing them to creep back to Speaker's Corner, spouting their vile, performing for the YouTube cameras, when we know they are all radical, extremist, Anjem Choudhury adherents.
Man, whatever happened to Britain? Like, I just don't get it. Like, you guys were like strong before, and now all of a sudden it's just like the complete opposite. Like, I just, it kind of shocks me. I'm just like, where's the backbone? Where's the spine? Like, what happened to like being British? I can't. I don't know, man. Probably Churchill's rolling over in his grave right now, but still, like, I don't know what the fuck happened to you guys, honestly. What happened? I just don't. I don't get it. Like, yeah.
But if you look at all of their faces, and if you look back on the photos and the videos of when Anjem Choudhury was walking the streets, their faces are all reappearing at Speaker's Corner, and every single British-based terrorist is linked directly to Anjem Choudhury. The guys that killed Lee Rigby, the London Bridge terrorists, they are every single one, even back to the 21/7 bombers across the tube network. They were all directly linked to Anjem Choudhury, and now his associates are reappearing at Speaker's Corner. And again, many of them used to come to Speaker's Corner. The London Bridge bomber was the regular attender at Speaker's Corner. They are now using Speaker's Corner as their place to start preaching their nonsense. And the police keep telling me, they're under scrutiny, they're under surveillance, they're under surveillance. Well,
yeah, off your taxpayer money. Yeah.
Exactly. Are they comfortable then weekly coming to Speaker's Corner, spouting their nonsense, whipping attracting the Muslim audience to their cause?
Oh, wonderful.
Well, I mean, I guess the question to ask is, are they inciting violence? If they're not inciting direct violence, do they have a right to be there? And in fact, if they are there, people get to see, the claims that they've been made, and then they also get to see other Muslims challenging them, like Ali Dawa and the rest of them, who are challenging these people. So
yeah, and I have to give Ali Dawa and Hussein and some of the others some credit, because they are, and actually Paul Williams, the most credit needs to go to Paul Williams, because if anyone is challenging these ISIS supporters, it's Paul Williams, and he's getting some grief for it. But as you say, there are others, Hussein, Ali Dawa, they are challenging these people. It's taken them a good while to do it, but they are finally publicly challenging these radical idiots.
How many British ISIS fighters have actually returned? Is there a number?
I mean, they've said in the media that it's thousands. It's at the low thousands, or 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. I've read.
Yeah, because I remember it was like 400,000 British Muslims downloaded ISIS's magazine or something. I was like, shit, that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
It is. It is.
This is going to fester and get worse. It's going to. Yeah. The virus is spreading.
It is, and getting more virulent.
You guys got to find a cure.
In some sense, that's that works against the Dawa, the standard Dawa people there, because people out in the street, and perhaps even moderate Muslims, but certainly non-Muslims, will hear this, and they will potentially mistakenly think that all Muslims are like this. So these people are in a sense hurting their Dawa buddies doing that, because that will be the sense that many people will come away with, is that you have these violent Muslims. Now, of course, not all Muslims are violent, but the loudest ones, the ones that get on video, etc., seem to be the ones that people remember because of their anti-Western, modern views, etc., etc. So it's almost in the moderate Muslims' interest to, challenge them at every single point on points in the Quran. Otherwise, that's what people will be left believing, because they shout the loudest. They obviously follow the Quran most, quote unquote, most literally. So it's almost a case of, I mean, you and I and everybody else can challenge them, but it's almost a case of letting the so-called moderate Muslims challenge them on Quranic verses and see what happens.
You record them.
They are being recorded. Stop. So I don't know if you saw the Content Over Everything channel. So some of them, obviously there was Ali Dawa challenging them, but then they were speaking to Steve and some other people as well. So there's 2 or 3 of them now. Is it Steve? 3 or 4 maybe? One of them's a white revert or convert. There's a black guy in there. The other one is that Ricardo fellow. And is there a 4th one? I can't remember.
There's the tall white convert. There's the short black guy. There's Ricardo McFarlane. There's another short guy.
Where do you see these guys? Because Content Over Everything has so much. I simply cannot spend so much time watching videos.
Yeah, but you just have to, trust us that there over the last 4 weeks, I would say, there are an increasing number of ex-Anjem Chowdhury's group reforming at Speaker's Corner, and they were members of a group that was prescribed. They were members of numerous groups that were prescribed by the UK government. They are now reforming at Speaker's Corner.
Wow! So why don't we analyze one of these videos and show people what to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's numerous videos, including Content Over Everything, and also my live stream of 2 of them last Sunday, saying how Sharia is going to be taking over the UK. It's going to take over the Parliament. It's going to take over Buckingham Palace. The exact rhetoric that Anjem Chowdhury used to spout.
I've put one link into that's a long one though. That's like almost an hour with.
Yeah, this is always the problem. I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah. I mean, we can look for shorter ones here. Here's one with Paul Williams, and it was a bit shorter, about half an hour. So again,
and maybe we can take one of those and then go through them here and point out. Listen, guys, this is what's happening. This is the kind of rhetoric. This is the kind of language that they're using. So beware if you hear something like that. I don't know if this makes sense. I don't know if this is helpful for anybody.
Do you mean you want to do like a critique of one of their videos?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Because at the moment, I think a lot of Muslims are lost. Okay, they're hearing 2 different sides. 3 actually. Because they're hearing, I don't know, I didn't know that Paul Williams actually took a stand for something. So they're hearing people like Paul Williams or Ali Dawa or that, and people saying, do not get violent, don't do this, and ISIS is bad, blah, blah, blah. And they're hearing us, or the non-Muslims, saying this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and then suddenly they're getting from fellow brother Muslims, this is the way to do it, and this is the correct way because here this is what it says in the Quran. And I would love to point this out to people, to show them, listen, don't be fooled, don't be tricked by this. What they're doing is they're just taking a singular instance. They are not qualified to go and change the interpretation of the Quran, because there's a certain step that needs to be taken before you are a mufti, before you're actually allowed to do that. And they are not doing that. They're not qualified. They're not authorized to do that. And then go and point this out and say, okay, what we suggest is go and check with blah blah blah. Just to use the arguments that we have from within Islam.
Yeah. Well, we can definitely do that then, and have a look at that and see. Cool. Is there anything else? Somebody was trying to contact me here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shut everything down.
No, that's fine. Somebody was trying to contact me here, I thought. I see in the chat there's somebody trying to contact me. Who is this? Rob Speakers Corner, I sent you a Facebook message, Arab Millennial. Well,
somebody in the chat. Yep, it's me.
Okay. I see that. I see a gentleman that's Arab Millennial there. Okay, if you guys have got time, we can let this gentleman join us here. Okay, Arab Millennial, I'm going to send you a link to it. Please keep the link private. Don't give the link to anybody else. You can join yourself and share with us a couple of thoughts. I'm not sure how long we're going to go on for. That'll depend on what you've got to say. So there you go. I've sent you a link in Facebook. So
3 minutes. I need to go to the moon. Lou. Moon.
The moon or the loo or both?
Hey, Rob, quick question. I was just curious, why doesn't Britain have their own constitution written down? Just out of curiosity.
Good question. I think you'd have to ask a Briton. We have one here. Steve is a Briton. So apart from, what do you call it, back in 10, not 1066, but the 1000s, the famous, the word escapes me now. Steve, what's the document that was signed to give people? Magna Carta. There you go. We don't have what you're asking is, why don't we have a constitution of some kind? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. Steve would probably be better placed to answer that. I'm not sure.
I'm not a historian. It's not my
Okay.
We need Andy online. He'd be able to answer that question.
Oh,
if you guys wrote it down, it would be. I think you guys would be in a lot better shape.
Germany doesn't have one.
Sorry?
Germany doesn't have one.
And look how well they're doing. Good old Chancellor Merkel fucked that country up nicely.
Hello.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Yeah, hi, good evening, Arab. How are you? Should we call you Arab, or what name do you want to use? That's what's appearing on your
even Oz is fine. Oz or Arab Millennial. ArabMillennial.net is my website, but I also go by Oz.
Oz.
I've met Steve a couple of times at the park as well.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The eyes.
Just share with us then. Are you a Sunni Muslim, and whatever, a little bit about yourself? Is there some topic you'd like to chat about?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a Sunni Muslim, and I run an organization called Arab Millennial, which it's not an Islamic organization, it's an Arab one. So it focuses on progress amongst the Arab diaspora that live like in the Arab world, in UK, etc. And it progress in all areas: economic progress, political progress, personal development. But I obviously, from time to time, these issues overlap with the Muslim question as well, which is why I take particular interest in this show.
Is there anything from tonight that you took interest in that you want to discuss?
Yes. So one of the major, obviously, I think we all agree that that the Wahhabi or Salafi narrative in the park is completely dominant. It's too much. Like, there is an over-representation of Salafism in the park, and the problem with their views is that they believe that they're objective, even though they're subjective. So Wahhabis and Salafis believe that they transcend any form of actual interpretation. When they don't, they are actually interpreting the Qur'an. But because of their assertiveness, because of their overconfidence in the fact that they're so logical and rational and objective, they tend to dominate the discussion. And actually, I've had a lot of Muslims that don't have their views come up to me in the park and just tell me like that they're fed up of it, completely fed up of it.
Why do you think Muslims like yourself and others don't speak out more on camera and kind of go to somebody and go, hey, I mean, Saracen's done it on occasions, so he's been vilified a little bit. Maybe there's that apprehension because, you know, some of their supporters are very vocal. Is that maybe, do you think, why, like yourself and others are not pointing out that, you know, they don't represent Islam and they've got just as subjective view as other people?
I think the problem, from a personal experience, I think the problem is the Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, these guys are literally gangsters. They are gangsters, and they move. Not all of them. Some Salafis are very intelligent, and there is a branch of Salafism that tends to go into universities and study mathematical, logical subjects, right? But there is another branch, and I see a lot of them in Speaker's Corner, that are literally ex-gangsters that have moved from one gang to another gang, which is the Wahhabi clan. And because they have this gang mentality, there are a lot of them. They're very assertive. They can be very spiteful with what they're saying. And I think it's simply the simple answer to your question. I think it just intimidates us out of, because I tried to talk up to it last week, and I said something that was very objective. I said to them, well, not objective, I take that, reasonable, right? I said to them that you can't pretend that you're objective when your views as a Muslim change every year or 2 years. So you think you're objective today, but next year you're going to have a different view. So obviously you're subjective. And I had a gang of Salafis kind of gang up on me, and then it put me off going to Speaker's Corner. They're just too overpowering.
But you must never give up going to Speaker's Corner.
But Steve, the thing is, I really kind of respect you because I think that you are very persistent. Now, I wish I had your patience, because I feel like, what's the point? These guys literally will not change their mind. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the wrong avenue. Maybe we should be going to universities and talking or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems completely pointless. They've got their head buried under the ground. There's nothing you can do. Like, it's quite depressing.
What do you think? I point something out, because it's like in a debate. In a debate, you are not actually trying to convert the person that you are debating. You are talking to the people who are watching. And this is why this is very important here, that if you are bringing a point which is a counterpoint, which is a reasonable point, which is a more rational point, it's very important to get to those people who are watching them to see that their arguments are not so sound, that their arguments are not so rational, not so logical, but that they are mere interpretations the same way as anybody else can interpret this. But the point is that what I've pointed out earlier is that not everybody is entitled to provide any kind of interpretation in the Quran. The second thing is, you're not supposed to be criticizing other Muslims. So you've got a double problem here.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And actually, I've never considered that before, that it's not just about discussing with the person, but also to the person looking at the through the computer screen. And I guess that does change my perspective a bit.
Because so much of what is said at Speaker's Corner now goes online. It's on YouTube. It's around the world.
Absolutely. And but you know what? One of the things that I find very interesting about Salafism is that they believe that there is an absence of Wahhabism rather. They believe that there's a complete absence of politics and political influence in their interpretation. But the fact that the Saudi government is prepared to commission it, and the fact that the ideology was born in a specific political context in Saudi, it is quite ironic. It's completely political. It's completely a political doctrine. And the Saudi government knows that it justifies the status quo there. So they can't pretend that they're apolitical and they're completely objective and neutral. They are not. If you could argue that it's also a form of innovation, this revivalism, this new Islam. It's a double standard. It's a complete double standard.
What is it that you most disagree with them? Then is it their literal interpretation? Are there certain like major facts that you disagree on?
I think it's a combination of their overconfidence and their inconsistencies. So, for example, like when they say that there's no interpretation in religion, yet when they make ablution before they pray, they're prepared to tap and not a flowing river. Using a tap is a modern device. So if you're gonna pretend to be completely objective and emulate everything they did and everything the three generations following the Prophet Muhammad did, then ride a camel to work. Don't drive a car to work. Make ablution in a river. Don't make ablution in the tap. I mean, you can't you can't apply interpretation in some areas and then in others say, oh, we don't interpret anything. We're objective and neutral. It's just it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit.
You made an interesting point. You said that, or you differentiate between Wahhabis and Salafis. How do you do that?
I differentiate between them because even though they're very similar, I think there are some Salafis that haven't read Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's book and don't take inspiration from that. They just like the methodology of trying to emulate the three generations following the Prophet. So that's how I differentiate.
Okay. So they do the same thing, but they're not really in the doctrine or not aware that they are following this, whatever. Okay,
I believe so. But Pete, obviously, if you guys think I'm wrong, because this is...
No, I was just curious, yeah, because I always... For me, it's the same thing, okay? At the end of the day, it's the same effect, the same consequence.
Yes, okay, that's interesting. But can I take your guys' advice on one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
So when you Google, as you probably know, when you Google Islamic issues, like, is it halal to divorce or whatever it is, yeah? You guys have heard of the Islam QA website, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that's obviously the first one that comes up most of the time. And when people Google stuff, especially Muslims, they click on that because it's one of the first links. Now, I looked into that website, and it is very, very Wahhabi. The people that are behind it there isn't a diverse opinion in that website, yet it's seen as like the Wikipedia of Islam. so like, how do we, do you think that there's a structural issue here, an institutional issue, where we need an equivalent to Islam QA that isn't dominated by this ideology?
Oh, theoretically, yes. But how do you enact this? I was very happy that the Wiki Islam pages were resurrected and were saved, because they give you like this counter. Well, it's not a balance as such, but it does give you a different opinion. But there are too few of those around, because, I mean, look at Wikipedia, for example. I mean, all the Islamic pages on Wikipedia are propaganda. There is nothing objective in there anymore. So there is so much effort, there is so much money, there is so much resources are being pumped into this. It's mind-boggling. So to be able to bring anything as a counterbalance or counterpoint to that is incredibly difficult and expensive.
Do you think, though, Stops, that this is all pointed towards keeping, current Muslims in the fold?
Yeah.
Or do you think there's people who are non-Muslim that are being convinced by any of that?
No. This is from inside.
Yeah.
In my eyes, this is the brotherhood. I mean, this is the way that it is. This is the plan that I see that is being enacted step by step, and they're just using whatever resources are available today.
Yeah.
The thing is, what's really interesting is that I'm a Muslim, right? And I can come to this conversation and talk. I'm sure that if I had a Google Hangouts with a Salafi gang from Speaker's Corner, they probably wouldn't be as accommodating and receptive of my views.
Isn't that ironic?
So you can see that, I mean, I completely agree that it is self-perpetuating, but you can also see how it can push people out of Islam. I'm sure that some Muslims will probably think, hang on a second, I've got non-Muslims that I can talk to and I can engage my intellectual curiosity. But when I talk to these guys, it's literally a cult where I have to just parrot the party line. And if I do that, I get promoted by the clapometer or the likeometer on YouTube. Then obviously people are going to leave Islam because they find people that aren't Muslims more accommodating of their intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
So they're only doing themselves a disservice. It's like anti-dawah. It's not even dawah. It's just a joke.
Yeah, but it's not seen like that because you're part of the in crowd.
Exactly. And why are they all gangsters? If you look at their persona, the way they talk, the way they behave, they're literally. Why is it that people of a particular caliber follow a different form of Islam and people of another caliber tend to follow this Wahhabi ideology? Doesn't that ring alarm bells?
Okay, but why did the alarm bells go off with you? What changed your perception?
I think going to university, because I studied politics at uni, and I think for me that was really opening. This was really. It made me see a world outside the Islamocentric framework. I just think that more of these people need to get further education in a wider field, in like arts, history, culture, society, things like this.
So why are they, okay, obviously then, why are you still a Muslim?
I'm still a Muslim. That's a very good question, okay? And I'll be completely transparent here. And I don't want anyone in the live chat or yourselves to use this against me. So I'm still a Muslim because, okay, first of all, I do believe in God, not in a personified sense of like a bearded man with a hand and all this, in a kind of fourth dimensional metaphysical sense.
Qur'an says that he has shins, he has hands.
No,
this is the question. Yeah. What does the Quran say about splitting into sects or claiming that there's sects inside of Islam?
Okay, well, wait. Why so religious? Just hang on. He was going to explain why he's still a Muslim, and then we can have some kind of a discussion if he's open for it. So just hang on a second.
Okay, sure. I'll try to answer that question as well. So yeah, why I'm still a Muslim, basically, honestly, It's what I know most. It's simply, I am a spiritual person. I believe in God. I believe in a force anyway, another agency. I don't want to word it in such mythological terms, but and I need a way to kind of connect to that and learn that. And the tool, the device that I know most and causes me less problems in following is Islam. I know it most, and it causes me the less issues. Unfortunately, there are huge consequences with leaving Islam, and that does play a factor as well. I have to say that it does play a factor.
Yeah.
But what does the Quran say about dividing into sects?
I'm not sure what the Islamic issue is on this specifically. I know that, sorry, from a Quranic perspective, from a Hadith perspective,
let's not look at Hadiths, because we start with the Quran. Every Muslim says they start with the Quran, then go to Hadiths. So,
okay, in that case, I can't answer your question because I'm not sure.
That is equatable to polytheism. It says that dividing Islam into sects is similar to what the Christians did with separating into Christian sects. Now, does the Quran consider Christians? Yes, it does, because it talks about it being a trinity and that God is one. So within side of the Quran itself, it doesn't allow saying, oh, well, I'm a Sunni, this person's a Shia, or, you know, that's Wahhabism as opposed to Sufism. It doesn't allow that. And when people mention hadith, 26 times in the Quran, the word hadith appears in Arabic, but never does it mention that you should follow any hadith, any story, any tale outside of the Quran. So if Allah is very precise with his words and his meanings in the Quran, which he claims to be, how come Muslims use hadith is in there, like I said, 26 times, but yet it never refers to, oh, but follow Muhammad's hadiths. It never says that.
So, so if you could summarize, I am following what you're saying, but if you could summarize in short what your position is on this, what would you say it was?
Well, I mean, originally, my whole position is, firstly, I believe that the Quran is completely flawed, and that there's, I call them Quran contradictions, because I don't believe a contradiction is equivalent to the Quran traditions that are there. Such as, you know, if a Muslim says that, oh, well, this is just interpretation. Well, anybody wants to, I believe is chapter 3, verse 7, states inside of it that only Allah knows what is what is allegorical, metaphorical, and that the Muslims are told to believe it all as a whole. And that if you don't believe it all as a whole, it's disbelief. So when a Muslim says, oh, well, there's not really, Allah doesn't have hands, or he doesn't have a shin. Well, if you're saying that's metaphorical, you're not allowed to do that. You're allowed to believe it only as Allah tells you to believe it. So,
yeah.
So with that being said, when he compares dividing Islam into sects and says that it's comparable to Christians, which is also comparable inside the Quran itself as polytheism, how do you get around that?
First of all, I completely agree with you that there is an element of picking and choosing and contradiction. So, for example, the Salafis would, like you said, they would happily say that, okay, that because we don't necessarily anthropomorphize God, even though it talks about his chair and his footstool hand, it's not a hand in the same sense that we. So they're interpreting that essentially. But when
let me, if I may, just real quick with that, you're wanting to use hadiths, but one of the most known hadiths about Muhammad going to heaven says that he saw the face of Allah. So if you're wanting to use hadiths, once again, you're cherry picking, as they say, hadiths that you want to follow, and you want to say, oh, well, that last part of it isn't true, but Muhammad ascending to heaven, that part has to be true.
And yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. I actually do, even though you're non-Muslim, like I actually do not disagree with you here. There is cherry picking from their side. There are elements where.
Why is it always their side? Why is it your side?
For me, I feel that the whole thing is metaphorical. It's sent to convey a message. Why is there a similar message
Are
in
you allowed to believe that inside the Quran? Are you allowed to believe that? That's my whole issue here.
I'm sure that other Muslims would say that that takes me outside Islam. I'm sure they would say that. But
no,
the thing,
but does Allah say it? It's not what other Muslims say.
Yeah.
Okay, it's what Allah says.
I honestly, I've been very, very sincere and honest in this conversation. That question, I don't know the answer to. I haven't looked into that.
Okay, that's fair, because you did exactly what Allah would say to do, which is if you don't know about something, then don't talk about it. So I'll give you credit on that.
Fair enough, but can I just say one thing, right?
Go ahead.
From an objective, academic, historical, political, sociological perspective, it's really evident to me that this is a message made to convey a wider point. This isn't about, oh, there's literally an angel on my right shoulder and one on my, and if I spit 3 times on my left shoulder, the devil will go. Obviously, it's not that. Because why does Christianity and Judaism have a similar message? There is a narrative here that people of that time were trying to convey, right? But now this seems so evident to me, and it seems so obvious to you that it's storytelling in that respect. But whatever this gang or this clan want to say, I can't deny my reason. I can't pretend to. I can't force myself to be irrational and ignore that.
I guess the question though was, okay, sorry, you wanted to say something else there? Why so religious?
That's everything.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point, though. You know, the Quran within side of itself says that it is the sign for those who believe. And I can't quote the verse right off the top of my head, but it essentially says you believe in all of it or you don't believe in any of it. You know, you can't just do this back and forth wishy-washy. I mean, even 489 of the Quran itself says that people who fall outside of the Quran and deviate from Islam, that you are allowed to fight them until they declare peace.
Okay, but why so religious? Let me just take up a point here with Oz just for a second. He's claiming that he does believe the entire Quran. He just believes the entire Quran is not literal, it's metaphorical.
He's not allowed to believe that.
Where does it say that in the Quran that he's not allowed to believe?
I don't have my notes with me because I'm at work, but I do have multiple videos about that. And the thing is just because I can't quote it off the top of my head, it's not for me to be able to give it to you. It's you to know your religion. Why is it that it's me that has to tell you something?
No, well, just as I'm listening to you, you're saying it seems to me that you're making.
I was using you in plural. I was using you as
plural, sure. It sounds to me like you're making the claim that he must take it literally, otherwise he's not following the Quran. And his view, from what I can understand, if I'm wrong, then tell me, Oz, his view seems to be that he is accepting the Quran, he's just accepting it metaphorically. Now, I've got a question on that separately. But you're going, no, he's not allowed to accept it metaphorically. He must accept it literally. So it seems to me that you are making a claim there. I understand you don't have the information to hand there, but I'd just be interested so that in future, if somebody like Oz does say that, then I've got that information. So it's almost for my information and everybody else as well.
It's on one of the Saracen videos. I can't. I'll find it tonight and I'll
send it to us. That's cool.
And then with the time code, but my whole point here is really and you know, like I said in one of those videos, a lot of channels like to say, oh, we have a Muslim on or we have an ex-Muslim, and they put them up, like I said, like the bird of paradise, finding the bird of paradise. When I obviously hear other people who are skeptics of Islam say, well, most Muslims don't know the Quran, or they've never read it, or this and that. And that's how I feel about what's going on most of the time. It's easy to have a Muslim come on or a Christian or whoever and just say, well, this is what I believe, parts of it's metaphorical, but what does your religion say? It's like people who are Christian, and just so you know that I'm not playing just one side against Islam. It's like Christians who say they don't believe in the flood, yet when Jesus Christ, the Jesus or whatever in the Bible says that have you not been told the history before you of Noah? And he lists all this other stuff. It clearly says that's what you're supposed to believe. So that's my whole issue that I was taking aim at, is if Muslims like to say, oh, well, they're not Muslim because they're Wahhabis or they're Shia or this and that, what does your Quran say about it? And if you're trying to tell me on a public platform that you're allowed to have any belief that you want inside of Islam, then that's not really submission to Allah, is it? The word Islam is, I mean, the word Muslim is submitter to Allah. That's the definition. So if you're trying to say, oh, I can have any interpretation I want, then how is that submission?
Sure. So can I come in?
Go ahead.
Proceed.
So first of all, the other speaker mentioned that it would be to his benefit for you to share that information, and I think it would be to mine too. So I would appreciate when you find, but essentially when you find the evidence that suggests that my views are un-Islamic, I would like to see
482. It. Somebody look up 482 of the Quran. I do have a Quran at my work right now, but
sorry, could I just? It wasn't. I'm not saying it in a competitive sense. In the sense that I would happily rationally read that and come to some conclusion. So that's what I mean.
Give me 1 second. I got my Yusuf Ali edition here at work, and I think I have it written.
Okay, but that verse is basically saying, do they not consider the Quran with care? Had it been from other than Allah, they would have surely have found therein much discrepancy. That's 482.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the the fallacy of moving the goalpost one. I'm sorry.
Again, you don't need to do it.
That earlier too.
You don't need to do it live at the moment if you're at work and so forth. That's fine. You can always do it later. A quick question for you though, Oz. Do you believe that the Quran was the literal? Was the word for word? What's the word? Recording of what God is supposed to have said to Muhammad via Gabriel. So every single word in there. Do you take the view that those words, whether you take the interpretation of the words literally or not, do you think those words that were spoken and are recorded in the Quran are exactly the words that Gabriel spoke to Muhammad over 23 years?
No, I think that it was a spiritual experience, a vision, whatever, but I don't believe the angel Gabriel literally descended from the sky and no. I mean, it's impossible. I mean, it's impossible for anybody that attempts to be reasonably rational to believe that literally.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because obviously that's what, well, certain other Muslims claim, because the whole ideology hinges on the fact that Muhammad was in a cave, heard voices or a voice that said certain things, didn't know who it was, had to go and find out from somebody else, and then it went from there. So that's
him saying that. Let's look at 3:7 of the Quran. This is Yusuf Ali. He it is who has sent down to thee the book. In its are verses basic or fundamental. They are the foundation of the book. Others are allegorical, but those in whose hearts is perversity follow the part thereof that is allegorical, seeking discord and searching for its hidden meanings. But no one knows its hidden meanings except Allah. And those who are firmly grounded in knowledge say, we believe in the book, the whole of it is from our Lord, and none will grasp the message except men of understanding.
Sure. So isn't that, could I suggest that that's in line with more with me than with Wahhabis in the park? Because I do have, well, I know this is a contradiction in terms, right? But to some extent, I do have the humility to recognize that I may not know the whole meaning or the whole interpretation of something. And I'm happy to accept that. Whereas, and that's precisely the quote that you've read, whereas somebody of a more literal perspective in Speaker's Corner would be so adamant that they've understood the verse, and they wouldn't necessarily be aligning with the fact that only Allah knows the deeper meaning of this. So from that perspective, I can see an element of consistency, but I don't know what your views are on what I've just said.
You see, one of the things that I think seems to me, as just looking at the outside of this, that you could always say is, well, this verse itself is allegorical. So you can always step back to the claim. So it's almost like it seems to me that's where Why So Religious got a good point. You would have to point to some information apart from your own interpretation that says that you are permitted to take this allegorically. Hang on one second. So you're permitted to take this allegorically, Oz, because you could always say that this verse, and I've got it on the screen now, that's actually allegorical to begin with. So this just gives us, and I can take an allegorical meaning from that. So you can keep stepping it back to everything's allegorical. So no matter what Why So Religious brings to you, you could, I'm not saying you would, but you could say, no, but I take that entire thing as allegorical. So he can never bring you something that you would go, oh, do you know what? Actually, I can't take it allegorically. I've got to take it literally. So what is your thought on that?
Oh, sorry.
I thought, oh, was that to me?
No, that was to Oz.
I was tempted to say what you said, but I didn't want to be seen as an apologist, so I avoided saying that. But yeah, I mean, you did say something that was on my mind, but I do prefer to go away and look at it, and that's sincere, by the way. I'm not just saying that to. I don't like giving an opinion that's not well thought through. So I do want to go away and consider these things, but I am very grateful that they've been raised.
Yeah, go away, because here's, I guess, the question, and Why So Religious can put it in his view. My question to you, based on what I've heard so far, is what grounding have you got to make the claim that the Quran is allegorical? Because obviously the Salafis, Wahhabis, whatever other people you think take it literally, they base it on the historic, and I say this in inverted commas, and you and I would probably agree on this, they base this on the historical account that Muhammad actually did go to the cave, he did hear this voice, that's all literal, and based on that, every single word in the Quran was literally dictated by Gabriel. And so that'll be their view. Now, for you to say, no, it's not, you would need something other than just your opinion, because at the moment it sounds like it's your opinion, and here's a verse that may contradict your opinion. So it would be good for you to go away and maybe come back and go, hey, next time we're on or whatever, and go, hey, do you know what, the reason why I think it's metaphorical is not just my opinion, it's X, Y, and Z reasons that we can evaluate, because that would be useful for all of us, I think, and especially for those that want to claim it's literal.
Sure. Can I
just real quick about the angels? You said you didn't believe that the angel Jabril actually came down.
Correct.
64,
correct.
Verse 31, and we have set none but and we have set none but angels as guardians of the fire, and we have fixed their number only as a trial for unbelievers, in order that the people of the book may arrive at certainty, and the believers may increase in faith, and that no doubts may be left for the people of the book and the believers, and that those in whose hearts is a disease and the unbelievers may say, what symbol doth Allah intend by this? Thus doth Allah lead to stray whom he pleaseth, and guide whom he pleases. So right here it's saying there is no doubts to be left for the people of the book, and it's even talking about angels. Now it's not saying that Jabril came and spoke to Muhammad. I'm sure I could find that verse also, but it's interconnected in the Quran. If it's saying that there are angels down in heaven, down in hell, and that they're watching over people and such, and then it says technically earlier in the Quran chronologically, but later in the book itself, that Jabril actually came to Muhammad. Where do you get off saying that's metaphorical?
Sure. So let me just pick up on what both of you guys have said, right? I agree that whether or not that leaves me in Islam is questionable. I agree with that. And that's something that I need to look into. The point about me taking it metaphorical could just be my opinion. I disagree with that. I'm taking it metaphorical because it's the only thing that I can do with it. I simply cannot rationally view that literally. I cannot. It's impossible. It goes against evidence. It goes against common sense, right? So I simply cannot take it literally. Whether that's compatible with Islam or not, that's the question that we need to discuss. Now, it's interesting because I almost feel like you want me to take it literally. Maybe you view me as more logical or more coherent if I took it all literally, which is quite fascinating. Yeah,
I think he's working, so he's not going to be able to respond all the time. I guess his point is, hey, here's what the Quran is saying. You seem to be saying that you can do something different to what the Quran is saying. And what's your justification for that? Maybe, as I say, that's for you to go away and to have a look at it and go, okay, here's why I think it. Because you, at the moment, you've said, I can't take it literally, and you've kind of appealed to your rationale. Now, another Muslim would come along and challenge you and go, no, but I'm appealing to my rationale and I can take it rationally. And that, in fact, that would be an interesting conversation. If we had a Muslim that wanted to take it literally and you didn't, I'd love to have the two of you on to have that conversation and see how that went. I think that that would be an interesting conversation, because he's going to presumably or potentially pick up some of the verses that Why So Religious has brought. And you would, if your only response is, hey, well, I can't take it literally, then obviously that doesn't feel very strong. So you would need to, and obviously you haven't had the time yet, or maybe you need to go into it a bit more to give the reasons why. So you've got an ontology, i.e. you're telling us what you believe, but then you need to sort of bolster that with your epistemology. Why is it that you believe what you believe?
Sure.
At the moment, obviously, that's maybe for you to have a think about.
When you've asked me other questions that I didn't know the answer to, I completely admitted that I didn't know and I need to go away. With this, I do actually know the answer, but I actually have to go.
Okay.
So another time, I'm very grateful you've invited me. And
come on again. We're here every Friday from 8 p.m. UK time. I'm not sure if you are UK based, but you've got me now on Facebook. So send me a message if I don't see it, because sometimes it doesn't ping me on Facebook. In the chat here, just send me a message, and we'd be happy to have you on. And I'd very much want to have you on if we had another Muslim who was taking it literally, and for you and him to have that conversation, because I think that would be interesting for all of us, both Muslims and non-Muslims, to hear two Muslims with differing opinions on the veracity of the Quran itself as it being literal or metaphorical. So hopefully you can join us again in the future.
Yeah, that would be great. And I really enjoy listening to you guys talk as well. So I would love to come back. And I do have an epistemic justification for what I'm saying. But like I said, I would need to come back another time, because I have to go into a meeting now. But another time I will happily talk about it. But I am not escaping. I will tell you if I didn't know the answer.
Cool.
Brilliant.
All right.
From me too. It's really refreshing to have somebody on here who knows how to talk and how to think, and who has done both. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay. Thanks, Oz. Take care. Hopefully we'll have you on again.
You too. Bye.
Cheers then. Okay, guys. I'm guessing he's not, well, he might be in the UK and might be a late night meeting, or perhaps he's elsewhere. He didn't say where he's based. But anyway, as I say, we'll happily have him on again. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Otherwise, I guess we'll bring it to a close here. We're after 11 here in the UK, and I guess after 12 for stops.
Good night.
If you can do a hadith stops.
Oh, shit. Done it again. Hey.
No worries. We can bring it up. I'm sure there's one of the hadiths that can maybe talk about whether the Quran is literal or figurative, or whether you can take it metaphorically or allegorically, or anything like that. I mean, obviously, Why So Religious has given us some Quranic verses there, but it'd be interesting if there's anything in the hadiths. That might be a big ask in like, a few seconds to answer.
No, and I will not do that, because otherwise I'm going to get very, very confused here.
Okay, no worries.
No, sorry, I don't have anything.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. This is Bukhari 4163. Birthmarks. Where do birthmarks come from? I hear you asking.
Yes, go ahead, tell us. We have got science to tell us, but hey.
Narrated Salama that the Prophet saw in her house. The Prophet saw in her house. Oh, they've changed prophetess. What's a female prophet? Prophetess. No, I think this is a typo. That the Prophet saw in his house a girl whose face had a black spot. He said, she's under the effect of an evil eye, so treat her with ruqya.
Ah, now we know. It comes from the evil eye. Yes, all that scientific thing with, genes and so forth. Well, we can just...
Hopelessly overrated.
I know. No, let's just go with the evil eye, because, hey, that's what they believed back in those days. And, we haven't progressed in 1400 years. So, why not use that? Or let's perhaps not do that. Let's just stay in the 21st century.
Blessed wisdom of the day.
I want to thank you guys on the panel for joining us, Steve, TJ, Why So Religious, and for Oz for joining us. Hopefully he'll come back again. And if you're a Muslim and you are listening and you want to join us in future, please do, because I'd love to have Oz and a literalist Muslim have that conversation around the Quran, and let's hear what views they've got and how they support them.
And I didn't bite. I didn't even bark.
No, you were quiet there. And anyway, I don't think he.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on, and sorry about me having to cut out there. I had to get back to work, and I always appreciate y'all allowing me to come on.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. Thank you to everybody. And I'm not sure he was really there to have a, to defend his views in any sort of long-winded sense, but hopefully he'll come on again and do that, and we can do that. He sounded much more sort of like a guy that he might not have an answer and he can say, I don't know. And I think all of us on the panel appreciate somebody who says, I don't know. Yeah. And hopefully he'll come on again and we can have that discussion, because it does sound like somebody that can have a rational discussion. Now, he may veer away from the Quran, and we can always, I'm sure you guys would as well, say, well, hang on, what does this verse say, which I think is important. And then he'd have to give a justification from why he may seemingly be diverting away from certain verses. But it definitely sounds like a fellow that we can have a conversation with. So
that is the big difference.
Yeah. So with that said, I want to thank everybody on the panel. Thank you to all the viewers. They do throw us a few thumbs up. We've got 32 thumbs up and somebody thumb down. And there's 57 people watching. So until next Friday, 8 p.m. UK time, all the best. Take care. Hopefully I'll be down at Speaker's Corner next Sunday. It looks like it's going to be a bit of a rainy one. So I don't know if you're down, Steve, but hopefully you don't get wet. And until next time, same time next week, good night, take care, and we'll see you then. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.